Hello everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal M. How's your day going? Leave a comment below and let me know. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel, and please feel free to share it with your friends and family. I love to hear about any mysterious experiences you've had today. With that said, let's get started. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Good night. So this is one of those stories that stayed in my family because nobody could ever really explain it. I heard it from my grandmother, and she heard it from her father, my great-grandfather, who was a gaucho. He spent most of his life moving cattle across the plains, driving herds from Cordoba down toward Buenos Aires. This would have been in the first half of the 1900s, back when that kind of life was still hanging on, even as fences and new farming rules were slowly pushing it out. He knew that land better than most people know their own neighborhood. Open plains, tall grass, damp air, barely any trees, just huge stretches of quiet country. He'd made that trip so many times he could probably follow parts of it in the dark. And one night, that's exactly what he was doing. He was awake late, keeping watch, when he started hearing a sound he didn't recognize. Now that might not seem strange at first, but for someone who lived outdoors like that, it meant something. He knew the calls of birds, dogs, cattle, foxes, owls, every normal sound the night could make. But this was different. He said it was unlike anything he had ever heard. So he got on his horse and started riding toward it. The closer they got, the more uneasy the horse became. Not stubborn, afraid. And that bothered him, because the animal usually trusted the land better than any person could. Still, he kept going until he reached a rise in the ground, and from there, he looked down into a place he swore had never been there before. Below him was this strange lowland, thick with plants he didn't recognize, wet and marshy in a way that didn't belong in that area. It looked almost like a swamp, which made no sense for that stretch of country. And out in the water, he saw them. He described them as huge reptile-like creatures, something like giant iguanas, but standing upright on two legs. He said they were moving through the water and making that same sound he'd followed through the night. According to him, they were enormous, maybe as tall as a horse up to the neck, maybe more. Big enough that there was no mistaking them for any animal he knew. The night was clear. He always insisted he saw them plainly, and he said both he and the horse were terrified. He stayed there only a moment, then turned back and rode hard to where the herd was. He waited until daylight, probably trying to convince himself he'd make sense of it once the sun came up. But when morning came, he went back, and the place was gone. No swamp, no strange plants, no creatures, nothing. Either he could never find that exact spot again, or whatever he had seen simply wasn't there anymore. What has always stayed with me is the kind of man he was. He wasn't a joker. He didn't drink. He wasn't the sort of person who made up stories for attention. In fact, telling this story brought him more ridicule than anything else, and still, he never changed it. He told it the same way for the rest of his life. He also wasn't educated in the formal sense. He never learned to read or write. He lived in a very isolated rural world, far from movies, museums, or the kind of media that might have filled his head with images of prehistoric creatures. And yet, the way he described what he saw sounds, at least to me, uncannily close to something ancient, almost like he'd stumbled into a piece of another age. I've never known what to do with that story. Maybe it was some kind of vision, maybe a trick of the night, maybe somehow a glimpse through a window that opened for just a few minutes and then closed again. So, I'm getting closer to 40 now, and over the years, I've had more encounters with shadow figures than I can even explain. The most common ones were the simple kind, just those darker than dark, human-shaped shadows. They never seemed all that interested in me directly. Usually, they'd stay tucked away in a corner of the room, just watching. And the second I tried to focus on them, they'd slip out of sight. They always left me uneasy, a little tense, like my body knew something was wrong before my mind could catch up, but it was never completely overwhelming. Then there was one I started calling the Hat Walker. He had that same old-fashioned, detective-like outline people always describe, and unlike the others, he seemed very interested in me. He didn't just linger in the background. He would come toward me. Every time the fear would build slowly, but once it took hold, it felt unbearable, like pure dread was filling every inch of the room. It always felt like life or death. But even that was different from the shadow I can only describe as this shapeless, shifting mass. Not really human at all, more like a living blot of darkness. That one was worse in a different way. There was no slow build. The second I felt it there, I knew I was in danger. Immediate terror, full body panic, like whatever it was had come for one reason only, and it wasn't good. But what happened most recently was different from all of them, and honestly, it rattled me in a way I can't stop thinking about. This happened just last night. I was in this incredibly vivid dream where I was fighting some kind of demon. At one point, it changed shape and became a young woman, like she had been trapped inside that thing the whole time. Somehow, after everything, I helped her get away with me. We were sneaking past these guards who were grinding metal rods into sharp points against the pavement, and the whole thing felt chaotic and dangerous. Eventually, we split up, and I went back to my room, except I was still dreaming. I laid down in my actual bed, in my actual room. At least that's how it felt. Then I heard people outside my bedroom door. Not just noise, but cheerful voices, laughing, talking. The kind of sound that should have been comforting. I watched my bedroom door swing open and then shut again, but there was no one there. Nothing visible anyway. And then, all at once, it appeared beside my bed. It was a shadow figure, but unlike any I'd seen before. It looked like some twisted plague doctor shape, with a long, beak-like profile and these jagged, smoky edges that seemed to flicker and tear into the air around it. The second I saw it, fear hit me so hard it felt like I drowned in it. I couldn't move. I couldn't make a sound. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep and rough, almost gravelly, and it said, "You can run, but we will always find you." I swear, every part of me froze even harder when it said that. Then it leaned in closer and lifted its arms like it was about to strike. That's when I finally forced out a scream, and the sound of it yanked me awake. I've had a lot of experiences with shadow figures, but this one felt different, more deliberate, more personal, and honestly, more terrifying than most of the others. I still can't shake the image of that plague doctor shape standing over me. Even now, just talking about it gives me chills. So, a little while ago, I was out in Deer Valley, just outside Park City, Utah, and I ended up having one of those conversations you never really forget. I was riding in a cab, and at first it was all the usual small talk. You know, where are you from, how long have you lived here, that kind of thing. But then the driver, a man probably in his late 50s, suddenly started telling me about something that happened to him when he was a teenager. He said he grew up on a ranch in Wyoming in a pretty religious Christian family. They went to church all the time, but he told me, laughing a little at himself, that he was always the bookish one. He said even as a kid, he had a hard time believing in anything that didn't make sense to him logically. Faith to him just felt unscientific. Then he told me about a trip he took with his family when he was around 14 or 15. They were visiting a historic plantation museum somewhere in the South at a former president's estate. I don't remember the exact name he gave me, and honestly, I wouldn't have known it anyway. but he remembered it clearly. He said they were walking through the property together, looking around the house and grounds, and at one point he stepped out through a back door by himself. The moment he did, he saw a young black woman standing nearby, maybe in her early 20s. He said there was something about her that immediately caught his attention. She looked calm, completely still, almost peaceful, just leaning lightly against the wall like she belonged there. What really stayed with him was what she was wearing and carrying. He said she had on old-fashioned clothing from that time period, the kind of clothes an enslaved woman might have worn, and in her arms was this large woven basket with a rounded bottom. Inside it were a bunch of tiny tied bundles of grain, maybe wheat, wrapped up neatly in cloth. He told me that detail bothered him more than anything, because he had grown up working with crops and livestock, and it made no sense to him. He couldn't understand why anyone would gather grain into such small bundles, or why they'd use a basket that couldn't even sit flat on the ground properly. It struck him as impractical, and because of that, he noticed it. He said he looked away only for a second, and when he turned back, she was gone. Not walking away, not disappearing off in the distance, just gone. He said the space around her was too open for someone to vanish that quickly, and it shook him enough that he went to find someone who worked there. He asked a woman at the museum whether they had staff or performers dressed in historical clothing. She told him no, they didn't do that there. Then she asked why. So he explained what he had just seen, and according to him, she paused and said, very matter-of-factly, "You're not the first person to mention something like that." That was the part he said stayed with him for years. What really got to him, though, was that he later tried to research the basket and the grain bundles because they had seemed so strange and so specific. And he found out they were real. There actually was a historical reason for carrying grain that way and storing it in those smaller wrapped sections. He said that bothered him in a deeper way than the sighting itself, because he couldn't explain how he would have invented a detail like that at 14 years old, especially one that had confused him in the moment. So that was it. The ride ended, and I never got to hear the rest. But I've thought about him ever since, mostly because he didn't tell the story like someone trying to impress me. He sounded grounded, almost reluctant, actually. Like he knew how unbelievable it sounded, and he'd spent years trying to make sense of it himself. So, this happened a few nights ago, and honestly, I still get chills thinking about it. There's this little park near my house, right beside a frozen lake, and lately I'd been going there at night whenever I had too much energy to sit still. Usually I'd meet up with a couple friends, but that night, nobody could come, and I was restless, so I went by myself anyway. It had snowed earlier in the week, but that night was calm. Clear sky, no wind, just one of those cold, quiet nights where everything feels a little too still. The second I stepped onto the playground, something felt wrong. The best way I can explain it is that it felt like walking through deep water or wet cement. Every step felt heavy, slow, like my body wasn't moving the way it should. And right away, I had this awful feeling that I wasn't alone. You know that feeling when you just know you're being watched, even though you can't see anyone? It was exactly that. There were 4 swings there, 2 regular ones, a toddler swing, and one of those wider, accessible swings. I set my speaker and my headphones down on one swing, sat on the one next to it, and started swinging just to kill time. I'd only been there maybe a minute or two when this wave of exhaustion hit me out of nowhere. And I mean extreme exhaustion. It made no sense. I'd left the house full of energy, I had loud music playing, and suddenly, I could barely keep my eyes open. I kept drifting off while I was still swinging. At first, I thought maybe I was just more tired than I realized. But then it happened again. and again. A few times, I'd snap awake and realize I was actually singing along to the song that was playing, word for word, perfectly, except I hadn't been singing before I closed my eyes. That part really got to me. It was like I was waking up in the middle of something I hadn't chosen to do. By then, I was seriously unsettled, and I just wanted to shake myself awake. For some reason, I thought checking my phone might help, like the light from the screen would snap me out of it. So I pulled it out, and the screen was flickering and glitching. I tried to brush it off because the cold messes with my phone sometimes, but then I looked to my left. The swing next to me was moving. Not lightly either. It was swinging hard enough that there was no way it could have been from me just shifting around. My speaker and headphones were still sitting on it, but it was clearly moving on its own. Then I looked to my right, and the other swings were moving too, each one in a different rhythm, not matching, not reacting to wind, because there wasn't any. That's when I really panicked. And then I looked farther out, toward the open area between the playground and the lake. I saw these figures, tall, black, solid-looking shapes standing in the distance. The lake was a good half-mile off, maybe a little less, and these things still looked enormous. Easily 20 feet tall, maybe more. And I know how that sounds, but I need to say this. I know that park. I've been there so many times. There are no poles, no trees, no signs, nothing out there that could have looked like that. Then I heard something hit the ground. I turned, and my headphones were suddenly way off from where I'd left them, like 8 or 10 feet away, just tossed into the snow. Not dropped, thrown. At that point, I got off the swing, grabbed everything as fast as I could, and started trying to leave. But even then, crossing the playground felt wrong. My legs were so heavy it was like trying to run in a dream. I was moving, but barely. Every step felt dragged out, like something didn't want me to go, and beside them were another set of prints. Not human, not animal either. I grew up around hunters, and I know what tracks usually look like. These weren't paws, hooves, or boots. They were just these strange, oval-shaped marks, almost like something round had been stepping alongside me the whole time. That was it for me. I called my friend right away, completely panicked, and stayed on the phone with him the entire walk home. I don't even remember half of what I said. I just remember needing someone there with me, even through the phone, because I felt like if I stopped talking, something bad would happen. The second I got inside my house, it all stopped. That heavy feeling was gone. The fear dropped off almost instantly. I felt safe again. Not totally okay. I had a pounding headache and I felt kind of nauseous, but the weird exhaustion disappeared and my energy came back almost right away. I do have a cross above my front door, and I remember noticing it when I came in. I don't know whether that means anything. Maybe it doesn't. But I remember seeing it and feeling this huge wave of relief. I still don't really know what happened out there. I just know that park has never felt the same to me since. I've never really forgotten this, even though it happened years ago. I think it was sometime around 2012, but I honestly can't remember what season it was. My younger sister Mara was about 10, and I was maybe 12. I'm 25 now, and out of everything strange that ever happened when we were kids, this is the one that still gets under my skin. Growing up, my sister and I always shared a room. My dad was raising the three of us on his own, and money was tight, so we lived in whatever places he could afford. We moved a lot. Looking back, there were a few houses where we both noticed odd things, little moments that didn't feel right. But there was one place that felt different from the start. It was this small mobile home sitting on a patch of land beside an old abandoned house. That house was terrifying. Even in daylight, it felt wrong. My sister and I used to joke that we saw things moving in the windows, but deep down, I think we both half believed it. We'd only been in the new place for maybe a week or two when both of us started having trouble sleeping. At the time, we blamed it on being somewhere unfamiliar. Now, I'm not so sure. One night, I was lying in bed wide awake. I thought my sister was asleep already. We always left our bedroom door open because my dad got up early for work, and the light from the hallway would spill in when he opened his door. That way we could wake up and say goodbye before he left. I remember staring into the dark, feeling this awful uneasiness, like something was in the room with us. Then I saw it. A tall figure, dark and hazy, almost like a person made of smoke, stepped into our room. It was wearing what looked like an old-fashioned hat, maybe a bowler hat, something rounded and strange. It moved slowly to the side of my bed and just stood there, looking down at me. I was frozen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't pull the blanket over my head. I just stared at it, and it stared back. It felt like it went on forever, probably 5 minutes, maybe longer. Then, all at once, it leaned toward me, like it was falling right on top of me. And just before it reached me, it vanished. I didn't sleep at all after that. I lay there until morning, trying to make sense of it. I knew what sleep paralysis was, and I kept telling myself that had to be it. It had to be. I needed it to be. When I heard my dad's door open, I jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. I threw my arms around him and just started sobbing. He kept asking me what was wrong, and all I could say was, "I don't know. I don't know what it was." He tried to calm me down, but he had to leave for work, and I was left there still shaking. Even then, I kept trying to explain it away. Maybe it was a bad dream. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe my mind made it up. But then my sister woke up. She looked unsettled, and she told me something weird had happened during the night. I asked her what she meant, and she described the same figure. The same tall, shadowy shape. The same strange hat. The same feeling of it standing there in the room. I can still remember the way my stomach dropped when she said it. And this is the part I still feel guilty about. I was so scared by hearing her confirm it that I panicked and told her it was just a bad dream, that everything was okay. I acted like I didn't believe her. For years, I let her think I thought she imagined it, when really I had seen the exact same thing. Eventually, I told her the truth. I told her I had seen it too, and she was furious. Not because she didn't believe me, but because she had spent all that time thinking she was crazy. I can't blame her for being angry. She had carried that alone because I was too afraid to admit it. But she's gone now. And that's the hardest part. Not just that people think I'm making it up, but that the only other person who truly knew what happened that night isn't here anymore. So I tell it the only way I can, exactly as I remember it. Because whether anyone believes me or not, I know what I saw. And so did Mara. I'm just a pretty ordinary guy, 19, nothing all that unusual about me on paper. But there's this part of my life I still can't explain, and honestly, even talking about it now gives me that same feeling I had back then. It really started when I was around 8, maybe 9. Over the course of a few weeks, I kept having these dreams, 3 of them in a row that felt way too vivid to brush off. In each one, there was this figure hiding in the closet in my room. It would just stand there watching me, taunting me, almost enjoying the fact that no one else could see it. And every time I got close enough to touch it, it would let out this horrible shriek that completely froze me in place. What stayed with me most wasn't even the way it looked. It was the feeling, that helplessness, like something was in my room and I was the only one who knew. Then one night, the dream changed. I saw that same figure, but this time it was bound up, powerless, and there was this calm, graceful woman beside it, telling me not to be afraid anymore. She told me to reach out and touch it. So I did, and this time it screamed. But it didn't affect me. I wasn't frozen. I wasn't trapped. After that, the nightmares stopped, but I don't think they ever really left me. Ever since then, I've had this constant sense that someone might be in the house when they shouldn't be. I've never been diagnosed with anything, and I'm not trying to claim something I can't prove, but those dreams changed the way I move through the world. They left me hyper-aware, paranoid maybe, especially at home. And over the years, a few things have happened that made that feeling even worse. The first one happened when I was about 13. I was getting ready to play online with some friends, and I remember tossing my headset onto the couch while my console loaded up. Super normal, nothing weird about it. I looked away for maybe half a minute, just enough time to get settled. Then I turned back around, and my headset was gone. Just gone. At first I thought maybe it slid between the cushions, so I checked around the couch for a minute or two. Nothing. Then I went upstairs. My bedroom was right across from the top of the stairs, so the second I came up, I glanced inside. And there it was. My headset was sitting on my nightstand in my room, neatly coiled like someone had carefully placed it there. I just stood there staring at it. I hadn't gone upstairs yet. No one had passed me. The only other person home was my mom, and she'd been in another part of the house the whole time. The whole thing happened so fast that there's just no way it made any sense. But I picked it up and walked away trying to act normal, even though I definitely wasn't feeling normal. The second incident happened pretty recently, only a few weeks ago. We have this storage room in the basement, and nobody really uses it. It's one of those spaces that feels off the second you look at it. Dark, cluttered, quiet in a way that makes you not want to linger. You have to go through a door in the downstairs living room to get into it. I was hanging out in the basement with a couple of friends when we suddenly heard something fall in that room. Something clearly dropped off one of the shelves. Now, logically, stuff falls. I get that. But this room barely gets touched. No one had gone in there, and the sound was sharp enough that all of us noticed it immediately. My friends kind of brushed it off, and I did too on the outside. But inside, I felt that old fear hit me again. That same cold, creeping feeling from when I was a kid. Then came the third thing, and that one really got under my skin because it happened so close to the second. At first, I figured my dad must have done it, so I didn't think too much about it. But later that day, he asked me why I'd moved it. I told him I hadn't. Then we asked everyone else. My brother said it wasn't him. My mom said it wasn't her. And the strange part wasn't just that it had shifted. It was where it ended up. It wasn't like it had simply rolled forward. It had changed position and direction in a way that made it look deliberately moved. That happened sometime between 10 at night and 8 in the morning, while everyone was asleep. And that's the kind of thing that gets to me. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's pointless. Random. Like there's no reason for it at all. There have been other moments too. Me and my brother used to blame each other for strange things happening around the house all the time. We've both heard heavy footsteps on the stairs when nobody else was awake. There have been bangs, movements, little things that are easy to dismiss one at a time. But when you stack them all together, they start to feel like part of the same story. I know how this sounds. I really do. And maybe there are explanations for all of it. Maybe there always were. But living through it is different than hearing it afterward. When you're the one standing there, looking at something that absolutely should not have happened, it stays with you. So yeah, that's part of my life. Strange, uncomfortable, and still unresolved. And to be honest, I'm not even sharing the worst of it. Just the pieces I can talk about without feeling like I'm back in that house, listening for footsteps again. Hey, this is a long one, but I've carried it around for years, and I still catch myself wondering whether anyone else has ever gone through something like this. Honestly, it just feels good to say it out loud. I grew up around a lot of strange stuff. My older brother used to mess around with a Ouija board, and there were always little things that made you pause. Footsteps on the stairs when nobody was there. A doll my cousin owned somehow ending up in a different room when the house had been empty. Things like that. But even with all of that, I always tried to stay reasonable. I kept telling myself there had to be other explanations. I never had one single experience that felt absolutely undeniable. Well, not at first. Years later, I remember stepping out of the shower and standing in front of this mirror that was completely fogged over. I was brushing my teeth, half awake, just staring at all the steam on the glass. I bent down to spit, looked back up maybe a second later, and there was a handprint on the mirror. Not a faint little mark either. I mean a full, clear handprint, like the steam had been wiped away completely in that exact shape. The mirror was fogged everywhere else, but that one handprint was perfectly dry. And weirdly, that didn't scare me nearly as much as what happened later. The thing that really changed me happened about 8 years ago, when I was 22. I was in college, living alone, and going through one of the worst periods of my life. I was dealing with night terrors, a lot of stress, and pretty frequent sleep paralysis. If you've never had night terrors, they're different from regular bad dreams. You wake up shaken, but you usually can't remember what you were dreaming about. And sometimes, the fear and hallucinations linger even after you're awake. Most of the time, I'd see things like spiders crawling around, or every now and then this man with dark, slicked-back hair, this huge, unnatural smile, and these wild eyes. Terrifying, but I always told myself it was just part of the sleep issues. Then one night, I woke up suddenly and sat bolt upright in bed. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. I checked the time. 3:54 a.m. And the fear I felt? I don't even know how to describe it properly. It wasn't normal fear. It wasn't even the kind of panic you feel when you think someone's broken into your house. It felt deeper than that. It felt spiritual almost. Like something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Like I wasn't afraid for my body so much as for something inside me. And for some reason, I was staring straight at the far left corner of my bedroom. Every instinct in me was screaming, "Don't go back to sleep." I remember sitting there, thinking this had to be another night terror. Usually, if I hallucinated after waking, it would fade pretty quickly. Maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and then reality would settle back in. But this didn't fade. I sat there for minutes, completely frozen, exhausted, but too terrified to relax. At some point, I drifted for a second, then jerked awake again like something had snapped me back. I knew, with every part of me, that I had to stay awake. Eventually, morning came. The light started coming in, the feeling lifted, and only then could I finally sleep. The next night, it happened again. Same exact thing. I woke up in terror, staring at the same corner. I checked the time. 3:54 a.m. Again. That was when it really got to me, because now it wasn't just a one-time thing. I turned on the lamp and sat there against the headboard, just staring into that corner while this thought kept repeating in my mind. Do not fall asleep. Huge mistake. I dozed off, then suddenly woke up again, and this time, the fear was even worse. What terrified me most was that I wasn't staring at the corner anymore. I was lying on my side, facing outward, and I was looking directly in front of me. I still couldn't see anything, but somehow I knew it had moved. Or maybe more accurately, I knew my eyes had followed it. I can't explain that in any logical way, but that's exactly what it felt like. A couple more minutes passed, and I was struggling to stay awake again. Then I drifted off one more time. What woke me that time was the sound of a paper wrapper on the floor beside my bed. It had come from a snack I'd eaten earlier, and it was the only thing on the floor. I heard it crinkle. Not shift, not settle. Crinkle, like someone had stepped on it. That was the moment I stopped being able to write it all off as just being in my head. So on the third night, I asked this guy I was seeing at the time, his name was Pierce, to stay over. I didn't tell him why. I just said I hadn't been sleeping well. That night, I slept straight through. No terror, no waking up, nothing. I felt better than I had in days. Then the next morning, Pierce asked me if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, actually. Why?" And he told me that sometime in the night, he woke up and saw me suddenly sit straight up in bed, just staring into a corner. I got chills immediately and asked him, "Which corner?" It was the same one. I can still feel that cold rush through me even now. I left after that and stayed at his place for a few days. His house felt peaceful in a way I can't really explain. Calm, grounded, safe. The whole place just had this warmth to it. Someone suggested I hang something protective in the room when I went back home, but I didn't really have anything religious. I wasn't raised that way. Then I remembered a little beaded necklace my mom had given me when I was a kid. She used to work in a nursing home, and one of the residents had given it to her. It was made with rosemary-colored beads and had a small cross on it. My mom thought I'd like it, so she passed it to me years earlier. I found it and hung it on my bedroom door. Around the same time, I also found this little purple angel charm. Another elderly woman had once given it to my mom and told her, very specifically, to pass it on to me because I'd need it someday. I'd kept it all those years without thinking much about it. When I opened it, there was a tiny angel necklace inside. After everything that had been happening, I started wearing it constantly. I mean, constantly. I slept in it, showered in it, checked for it without even realizing I was doing it. Every night before bed, I'd tuck it under my pillow or hold on to it until I fell asleep. For the next few nights, I still woke up at 3:54 a.m., but the terror was gone. I'd feel anxious, sure, probably because the whole thing had shaken me so badly, but it wasn't that same crushing, soul-deep fear. Still, things weren't completely over. I continued having sleep paralysis now and then, and once again I saw that same grinning man lying beside me, staring at me. But the final thing that happened, that was what ended it. One evening, not very late, I decided to take a quick nap before going out. The lights were still on. I remember touching the necklace at my collarbone and thinking, "I'm only napping, I'll just leave it on." I fell asleep with my fingertips resting on it. In the dream, I was standing in front of this unbelievably tall mirror. Around me were these presences, beings I couldn't actually see, but I could feel them all around me. They were trying to lift me up, like they were trying to carry me away somewhere. They lifted me higher and higher, and I remember panicking and fighting with everything I had. Right when they had almost dragged me all the way up, I screamed at them to get the hell away from me. And suddenly, they dropped me. I woke up instantly and reached for the necklace. It wasn't on me anymore. I found it neatly wrapped up at the foot of the bed, on the opposite side from where I'd been sleeping. After that, everything stopped. Completely. I've never really been able to explain any of it. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe there isn't. I still go back and forth sometimes, but even now, when I think about those nights, I get this nervous feeling in my chest. And to this day, I still keep those beads hanging up. I haven't taken them down once. When I was about 7, both of my parents worked long hours, so I spent most of my time at my grandparents' house. It was basically my second home. One evening, we were all sitting together watching TV when my grandfather, who had this really odd sense of humor, made a joke that my parents had gone away and weren't coming back for me. And, I was a little kid. I believed him completely. I remember walking into the hallway and just breaking down crying. And that's when I saw it for the first time. I don't even know if I should call it a person. It didn't feel human. All at once, my body went completely numb. I couldn't move, couldn't yell, couldn't even turn my head. and from the guest room at the end of the hall, this thing stepped out. It was unbelievably tall, almost brushing the ceiling, just this dark figure with hardly any features except tiny eyes and this long, unnatural smile. It started walking toward me, and then nothing. Everything just cuts out there. The next thing I remember, my grandmother was carrying me to bed, telling me I must have fallen asleep in the hallway. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. For years after that, it kept happening. I'd leave the bathroom or turn into the hallway, and suddenly that same numbness would hit me. The air would feel thick, heavy, wrong, and he would be there. Sometimes he'd just stand there staring at me. Sometimes he'd be sitting across from me, completely silent, just watching. He never said a word. Until one day, he did. My parents had brought me back home after a visit to my grandparents, and later they went out to the store while I stayed in the living room coloring. It was summer, early 2000s, and the windows were open because we didn't have air conditioning. Then I felt it again. That same paralysis. I looked up, and he was standing outside the window, staring in at me. And then he said, "Let me in. I can't come in unless you let me in." I was terrified. I couldn't do anything except stare back at him. Eventually the feeling lifted, and the second I could move, I ran into the hallway screaming and crying. I was completely hysterical until my parents came home. I told them, but it wasn't the first time. And like always, they said I needed to stop scaring myself, that I had an overactive imagination. So it continued. Year after year. Eventually, my mom got so worried that she took me to see this woman who lived a couple towns away. Looking back now, I honestly think she must have been some kind of spiritual healer, maybe even a witch. She told my mother that my third eye was open and that she was going to close it. I only remember pieces of that day, little flashes. I remember being carried. I remember being turned around over something burning, maybe bundles of sticks or herbs. I remember heat, way too much heat for a child to be that close to fire. But after that, he stopped coming. For a long time, I didn't see him at all. Then 2 years ago, when I was 26, I spent the night at my grandmother's house. My grandfather had passed away a few years earlier, and I was sleeping beside her. She was snoring so loudly that in the middle of the night, half awake and irritated, I grabbed my pillow and blanket and went to sleep in the guest room. Yes, that guest room. I didn't even think about it. I fell asleep, and then I woke up suddenly because something hit me in the head so hard that I actually fell off the bed. The first thing I said out loud was, "Absolutely not." I grabbed my stuff and ran straight back to my grandmother's room. I was shaken up, but eventually I managed to fall asleep again, except when I woke up the next morning, I had this huge lump on my head, about the size of a tennis ball. After that, I just pushed it down and tried not to think about any of it. Then last year, I was talking to my brother about how creepy our grandparents' house always felt when we were kids. And out of nowhere, he casually brought up this very tall figure that used to come out of the guest room. I swear, I almost stopped breathing. I started asking him questions right away, and every single detail matched. Tall, dark, nearly ceiling height, tiny eyes, smiling. Same room, same feeling. Exactly the same. My brother was born when I was around 6 or 7, and he told me he never said anything because by the time he was old enough to explain it, I was older, and he thought I'd just laugh at him. But we both saw it. The same thing. And that's what really gets to me, because for years I tried to explain it away. I tried telling myself maybe I was just a scared kid. Maybe my mind made it up. But hearing him describe the exact same figure from the exact same room changed everything. And when we asked my aunt about the house, she said strange things used to happen there all the time. She was always more open to spiritual stuff, so I knew she wouldn't brush it off. She told us they used to wake up and find eggs cracked on the walls. Light bulbs would explode for no reason. She always felt this heavy, unsettling presence, even if she never actually saw the figure I described. At one point, the electrical problems got so bad they almost caused a fire while nobody was home. So my grandfather brought in a sheik to bless the house. Things calmed down for a while after that, but eventually the problems came back. Even recently, there was an electrical short that knocked the power out for days, and the electricians couldn't fix it right away. As far as I know, nobody died in that house. My grandfather built it back in the 70s, and no other family ever lived there except ours. The guest room, though, used to be part of the kitchen before they renovated the house after all the kids moved out. So now, honestly, I don't know what to believe. I just know what I saw, and now I know I wasn't the only one. So, my husband and I spent the weekend at the DeSoto House Hotel for a little mini honeymoon. And honestly, it turned into one of the creepiest experiences I've ever had. We'd always talked about going to Galena, and when we finally planned the trip, we picked the DeSoto because the location was perfect, and it just looked charming. Cozy, historic, romantic, all the things you want for a getaway like that. What we didn't know when we booked it was that the hotel had a haunted reputation. The moment we walked into our room, something felt off to me. I couldn't explain it at first, but it was the bathroom that really got under my skin, especially the mirror. When the bathroom door was open, you could see that mirror clearly from the bed, and I immediately hated it. It had this strange energy to it, like it wasn't just a mirror. I remember telling my husband Aaron that it made me uneasy, but I brushed it off pretty quickly. I didn't want to sound dramatic, and honestly, he'd planned the whole trip, paid for everything, booked everything. I just wanted to enjoy it. And for a while, we did. We had a great dinner in town, grabbed drinks after, and came back to the hotel feeling relaxed. We were standing in the lobby, looking at one of the old glass displays, when the night manager came out from a side room and asked if we'd been waiting for him. We told him no, that we were just curious about the hotel's history. He started chatting with us and gave us a little background, not just on the hotel, but on himself too. He said he'd actually gotten married there years ago, in what used to be the library, and is now part of the tavern. Then, almost casually, he mentioned that the hotel was haunted, though he said he didn't really believe in ghosts. That was strange enough, but then he encouraged us to wander around and look at the empty rooms and halls while it was quiet. After a bit, he told us to follow him downstairs to the basement because he wanted to show us something really interesting before he finished closing up for the night. So we followed him. He took us down into the basement while shutting off lights as he went, which already felt unsettling. Then he showed us this hole in the wall and told us the story of the Lady in Black. According to him, people had seen this woman in mourning clothes for generations, and she always disappeared into that opening in the wall. He said sightings supposedly went all the way back to the Civil War era. And then, despite saying he didn't believe in ghosts, he admitted some of his coworkers had seen her themselves while working late at night. At that point, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing straight up. Then he led us through this dark back area and shined his flashlight on what he said was part of the hotel's original facade hidden in the basement. He didn't want to turn the lights on because he said it looked better in the dark. And I'm sorry, but that did not help. Nothing actually happened down there, but the whole thing felt unnerving. I was trying to stay calm, but as a woman, you don't just blindly trust someone because they seem harmless, even if they're older and polite. I was with my husband, so I felt safe enough, but my heart was pounding the whole time, especially walking back through what felt like this endless dark service hallway to get upstairs again. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So I started looking up the hotel's history, and that made everything worse. I found out the floor we were staying on, the third floor, was supposedly the most haunted part of the whole hotel. People had reported feeling a presence in their room, feeling something tug at their feet or ankles, even feeling the bed dip like someone had sat down beside them. But the second night was different. We came back a little earlier, and there was no one at the front desk. We'd mostly stopped thinking about all the ghost stuff by then, so this time we went to sleep with just one lamp on and the bathroom door open. Sometime in the middle of the night, both my husband and I woke up separately, and both of us saw something in that mirror. He told me later that he saw what looked like the back of someone's head reflected in the bathroom mirror, like someone was standing at the foot of our bed. He said he didn't wake me because he knew I'd panic, and he just tried to go back to sleep. I woke up at 3:26 a.m., which freaked me out even more because our room was 326, and when I looked toward the bathroom, I saw what looked like a man's shoulder in the mirror. Not a full figure, just enough to make my blood run cold. And I had this awful feeling in my chest, this deep certainty that someone, or something, was hiding just out of sight in that bathroom. I told myself it was probably a towel, or maybe a trick of the light, and somehow I forced myself to go back to sleep. But in the morning, there was nothing there. No towel hanging in a way that could explain it. Nothing jutting out from the doorway. Nothing at all that could have made that shape. And my husband swore he never got up during the night. By the time we checked out, we were both looking at each other like, what exactly did we see? And honestly, the weirdest part of all might have been that night manager. Because after everything that happened, we started wondering whether he was just a helpful employee, or whether maybe he was part of the story too. So this happened when my family and I went on a little staycation at a hotel in our own city. It was supposed to be simple, relaxing, nothing dramatic. We even ordered an extra bed for my younger sister Lila, and honestly, that's when everything started to feel off. The first strange thing was the bathroom door in our room. It would only open if someone pushed really hard from the outside, almost like somebody was inside holding it shut. At first we laughed it off, but then, throughout the day, we started hearing these random knocks. Not just from the walls, but from the table too. Just sharp, sudden knocking sounds that made no sense. It was weird enough that everyone felt uncomfortable, but since we'd already paid for the room, my family decided we were staying the night anyway. We complained to reception, and they did send staff to check. But there was no construction going on, no one in the rooms next to ours, nothing that could explain what we were hearing. So we just stayed. That night, I managed to fall asleep, but my cousins later said they heard crying, and something like howling. By morning we left, after breakfast of course. My family was very much in the, we paid for this, so we're at least getting one night and the free breakfast mindset. I kept saying we should just leave, but nobody wanted to waste the money. Which, looking back, is kind of ridiculous, because apparently terrifying knocks from the walls, doors, and furniture still weren't enough to make us pack up immediately. Then about 2 weeks later, things started happening at home. At first, it was loud knocking on the wall behind my bed. Then it started happening in my grandmother's room too. The sounds were so loud and so frequent that they actually gave us headaches. We checked with the neighbors, thinking maybe someone was doing repairs or something, but they were out of town. And we live in a large house, so the noise really had nowhere obvious to come from. Then the intercom started ringing. We have intercoms in different rooms of the house, and they began going off on their own. Always around these really specific times, like 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. Whenever someone picked up, there was just silence. At first, we thought someone in the family had to be messing with us. So one day, everyone gathered in the living room on the ground floor just to prove nobody was near the system. And still, the intercom rang. Even the men in the family, who had been brushing everything off, got seriously shaken after that. My uncle even disconnected the intercom system completely, cut the wires and everything, and somehow it still rang. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a prank and started feeling genuinely disturbing. One evening, the knocking got so loud that we all ran to my grandmother's room because she was terrified. Later, 2 of my cousins swore they saw shadows moving behind the curtains, though I can't honestly say I saw that myself. Then my aunt told us she'd had a dream about a shadowy figure, almost childlike, asking her, "Why are you trying so hard to make me leave when I haven't harmed anyone?" That really stayed with all of us. Around that same time, my sister said she could hear the knocking at school too. We thought she was just frightened and imagining it, until her teacher confirmed it. She said they were in the library when loud knocking sounds started. The staff thought some student was causing trouble, so they lined everyone up and searched, but the knocking kept happening and no one could find where it was coming from. After that, we followed every instruction the priest gave us. We called my sister by her new name. No one slept alone anymore, always in pairs, and nobody was allowed to wear perfume. A few weeks later, he returned carrying this long, thin stick. He slid it across the walls of the house while reciting prayers the entire time. Slowly, little by little, the activity started to die down. The knocking became less frequent, then weaker, and eventually it stopped altogether. And since then, nothing like it has ever happened again. We still live in the same house now. I'm honestly not someone who scares easily, and I'm not the type to jump straight to paranormal explanations. But whatever that was, it shook me and my entire family in a way I don't think any of us will ever forget. Honestly, I don't even know how to explain this without sounding completely ridiculous, but ever since I was little, I've had these dreams that sometimes seem to show me things before they happen. Not every night, not even often enough for me to make sense of it, but when it does happen, it's weirdly precise. I've always been a vivid dreamer, so for years I told myself it was just my imagination getting carried away. Still, every now and then something from a dream shows up in real life, and it leaves me with that awful feeling of, wait, I've already seen this. The first time I really remember it happening, I was probably around 9 or 10. I had this random dream where I walked into a bedroom and saw a little homemade decoration hanging inside an open closet. It was made out of white pom-poms and string, kind of like a lopsided cloud for a school project. That was the whole dream. Nothing dramatic, nothing important. A few days later, I went over to my cousin Caleb's house, walked into his room, and there it was. The exact same closet, the exact same silly cloud thing hanging there. I remember just freezing for a second. Most of the time, that's what these dreams are like. Tiny things, odd details, stuff that would sound meaningless to anybody else. Sometimes they're even useful in a strange way. They've made me trust my gut more than I probably would have otherwise. But not all of them are harmless. A few years ago, the phone rang really early in the morning and woke everyone up. Before my mom even answered it, I sat up and said, "Something bad happened." I don't know why I said it. I just knew. And then she answered the phone and found out that my other cousin had died. For the longest time, I tried to write all of this off as coincidence. I really did. But after enough moments like that, it starts to feel less like chance and more like a pattern you don't know what to do with. And as I've gotten older, it's changed a little. Now it's not always a dream. Sometimes it's just this feeling, like something is off, like something is coming. The problem is I also deal with anxiety, so telling the difference between intuition and fear is almost impossible sometimes. That's part of why this has been weighing on me lately. For the past several months, I've been dealing with sleep paralysis. Usually it's the same kind of thing people describe. I wake up and can't move, can't properly open my eyes, and there's this heavy dread in the room. It usually passes pretty quickly, but almost every time it happens, there's some strange dream attached to it. A few nights ago, I had one of the worst ones yet. In the dream, there was this figure standing over me. I don't even know what to call it except something inhuman. It was holding this long staff or rod, and its body looked raw, almost skinless. It didn't say anything. It just stood there, then drove the staff straight into my head, and I woke up in a panic. I figured my brain had probably mashed together something I'd watched earlier in the week and turned it into nightmare fuel, so I tried not to think about it and eventually fell back asleep. Then I had another dream right after that, and this one felt completely different. There was an older woman there, maybe in her late 50s or 60s. She was calm, gentle, the kind of person who makes you feel safe immediately. She reminded me of a nurse, or maybe just someone used to taking care of people. In the dream, she was drawing blood from my arm through an IV, looking at it very carefully. Then she looked at me and said, very seriously, "Your blood is too thick." After that, she told me I had been cursed. Then she told me the cure was to drink a tea made with cumin and cinnamon twice a day for a long time. Something like a few months, or maybe close to a year. Now, I'm skeptical by nature. I really am. I question everything, especially my own brain. But later that day, out of pure curiosity more than belief, I stopped by a shop after work and bought cumin and cinnamon. I made the tea that night, and it tasted awful, genuinely awful, but I drank it anyway. And the strange part is, the next morning I actually felt better, clearer, lighter, more awake. Maybe it was placebo. Maybe it was just the comfort of feeling like I was doing something. I don't know. I did look it up afterward and saw that too much cinnamon can be harmful, so I'm not about to blindly follow dream instructions forever. But still, I can't deny that I felt different. That's the part that keeps bothering me. I'm not asking anyone to believe me, because honestly, I'm not sure I fully believe myself. But these kinds of things have been happening for so many years now that I can't just dismiss them and move on. They stick with me. They make me wonder. And they make me feel like there's something happening just outside what I can explain. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I keep having dreams that seem to know things before I do. And lately it feels like they've started trying to talk to me directly. And I can't tell whether that's a gift, a warning, or just my mind doing something I don't understand. I've learned something the hard way. Just having religious or spiritual objects around you doesn't automatically make the scary stuff disappear. I really think you have to believe those things can protect you. You have to feel it in yourself. From what I've experienced, supernatural things seem to go after people when they're vulnerable, when they're exhausted, when they're already afraid. It's like they feed off doubt. And honestly, I don't think they can do much unless they sense that weakness in you. That's why I started understanding why people turn to all kinds of protection. Religion, spiritual practices, prayer, rituals, runes, chants, incense, sage, bells, singing bowls, salt, holy water, crystals, scripture, keeping the lights on, wearing a cross, carrying a charm, even just surrounding yourself with people who make you feel calm and safe. Things like rosaries, the evil eye, a Hamza, whatever speaks to you. I think the point is not just the object itself, it's what it awakens in you. And I'll be honest, I think there's something beautiful about that. Starting from nothing, from total fear, and slowly building belief. Over time, the things that once felt like ordinary objects start to feel charged with comfort. They begin to mean something. They help you feel protected, grounded, held. When my own strange experiences started around February 21st, I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening, and my mind went straight to the worst possibilities. I thought something could really hurt me. But over time, I started noticing that whatever was happening only ever seemed small. Little noises in the house, tiny shifts, the faintest sensation, like something brushing against you so lightly you almost question whether it happened at all. Maybe that sounds ridiculous, maybe it sounds unbelievable, but that's truly what it felt like. And the biggest thing I want to say is this: do not let it consume you. Do not let fear convince you that you are powerless. Also, please take care of your mental health. I mean that with my whole heart. Take your medication if you need it. Go to therapy. Keep your space clean. Make your room, your home, your bed, your corners of the world feel soft and safe and lived in. That matters. Safety matters. Stability matters. Sometimes the most powerful protection is being cared for properly. I'm not even someone who grew up deeply religious. I've always been skeptical, and I've definitely always been afraid of the dark. So if I can find ways to calm myself and keep going, I really believe other people can too. If faith helps you, lean into it. Go to church. Pray. Read scripture. Wear something blessed if that brings you peace. Visit a crystal shop if that gives you comfort. Choose the things that make you feel stronger in your worst moments. Hold on to whatever reminds you that you are not helpless. And if you've dealt with anything like this, I just want to say, I'm sorry. It's such a lonely thing to talk about. People judge so quickly. There's so much stigma, and that makes it even harder to ask for help or be taken seriously. So truly, if you're going through something you can't explain, I hope you find support. I hope you find peace. And more than anything, I hope you remember that fear does not have to own you. I still get chills when I think about what happened to me in May of 2010. My partner, Marcus, and I live in this old house that was built back in the 1920s. And if you've ever lived in a place like that, you know they're never really quiet. The floors pop, the walls creak, and at night it always sounds like someone is moving around, when really it's just the house doing what old houses do. I'd gotten so used to it that I stopped paying attention. Most nights, if the sounds got louder, I'd blame it on Marcus shifting in his sleep, or one of us having a bad dream. But that night was different. Marcus had been away in Singapore for work for nearly 2 weeks, so I was in the house alone. I went to bed a little after midnight, completely worn out, and I fell asleep fast. Then, sometime around 3:40 in the morning, my phone buzzed twice on the nightstand. It was on vibrate, and I remember thinking, half asleep, that it was probably Marcus messaging me during his afternoon. I reached for it and checked. Nothing. No text, no missed call, no voicemail, nothing at all. I remember staring at the screen, confused, then putting it back down and telling myself I must have dreamed it. But maybe a minute later, it buzzed again. This time, there actually was a message, but it was just some junk spam. I was irritated, but more than that, I suddenly felt off. Wide awake. Cold. Like my whole body had gone tense for no reason. I tried to settle back down, but I couldn't get comfortable. I kept shifting under the covers while the house made its usual noises. Only after a moment, I realized the sounds weren't coming from the hallway or the floorboards anymore. They were inside my bedroom. close, too close, near the bed, near the nightstand, right by the headboard. I went completely still. I was trying to make sense of it, trying to tell myself there had to be some explanation, when I became aware of this strange sound in my head. The only way I can describe it is like radio static, soft but constant, except it wasn't coming from the room. It felt like it was happening inside my skull. And then I heard it. A child laughing. Not loudly, just this soft, almost playful giggle coming from outside my open bedroom window. I froze. Because who hears a child outside at that hour? Who hears that in the dead middle of the night and doesn't instantly know something is wrong? The giggling got closer. Not louder in a normal way, but nearer. Intentional, like it was moving toward me. And somehow, without hearing footsteps or anything I could explain, it felt like whatever it belonged to had come through that window and climbed right onto the bed. I was lying on my side, facing away from Marcus's side of the mattress, and then I heard movement over there. I felt the bed dip. I felt the covers shift under a weight I couldn't see. Something was crawling across the mattress toward me. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body locked up. I just lay there, staring into the dark, while that giggling came closer and closer until it was right beside my ear. And all the while, that static kept buzzing inside my head. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Then all at once, the giggling stopped. And what came next was one of the most horrifying things I've ever heard in my life. It exploded into this single, deep, guttural scream right into my ear. Not human, not animal, just raw and violent and wrong. It felt like it tore through me. For 1 second, I couldn't do anything, and then I snapped out of it. I still can't explain what happened that night. I know how it sounds, I do, but I also know what I felt. The mattress sinking, the thing moving toward me, that laughter, that scream. Whatever was in that room with me, I don't believe it was human. I'm not really sure how to start this, but a few nights ago, something happened that honestly still has me shaken. So, for a little context, we have this garage that I use like a little hangout spot. It's where I go to sit, smoke, unwind, and just be by myself for a while. The garage door is pretty old, definitely not new, and until recently, I didn't even have a working key for it. The only way to open it was from the inside by pressing the wall button, and that matters later. Ever since we moved in, I've had this weird feeling in that garage. The room above it too. Nothing dramatic ever happened at first, but I always felt uneasy in there, especially when I was alone or when it got dark. Just one of those spaces that never feels fully empty, you know? A few days before all of this, I was sitting out there with my boyfriend Levi, just hanging out. I was rolling, and I dropped a little stem into the ashtray without really thinking about it. Later on, I looked down and somehow it was back on the table. I figured maybe I imagined putting it in the tray, so I picked it up and tossed it back in. Then, after a while, it was back on the table again, in almost the exact same spot. Now, sure, maybe it could have fallen out. I tried to tell myself that. But twice? Landing in the same place? It just felt odd. I laughed it off and made some joke about the garage being haunted, but deep down, it definitely stuck with me. Then the next night, we were in the garage again, just sitting there, and out of nowhere, the garage door opened by itself. Not just a little twitch or a partial lift, I mean it rolled all the way open. Both of us froze. What made it so unsettling is that the door shouldn't have been able to do that. The key was in my pocket, and even if someone wants to say maybe the remote got bumped, it's not that simple. The button on it has this little cover you have to slide down first, and you have to aim it just right at the sensor because it's old and finicky. It's not the kind of thing that just goes off by accident. That was already enough to freak me out, but what happened later is what really got to me. That night, I was out there by myself, just about to head back upstairs. Everything was quiet. Then I heard the motion sensor click 4 times really fast, one after another. And right after that, the garage door started beeping. That beeping only happens when something is physically pressing against the door. I know that for a fact because I tested it later. You actually have to lean on it with some weight for a few seconds to make it do that. But there was nobody there. Nothing was touching it. No draft, no animal, nothing I could see. And then the red sensor light started blinking like crazy. I can't even explain the feeling that hit me in that moment. It was like every part of me knew I was not alone in there. I backed out so fast I don't even remember shutting anything off. I just wanted out. The next day, I went back to try and recreate it because I wanted some logical explanation. I really did. But I couldn't. I pushed on the door myself, tested the timing, watched the sensors, everything. The door would only beep if I leaned my weight into it for a few solid seconds, and I couldn't get the motion sensor to click in that same fast pattern no matter what I did. Levi keeps saying it was probably smoke, wind, or dust messing with the sensors. And maybe that would make sense if anything like this had happened before. But it hadn't. That's what I can't get past. So, I've never really told this story out loud before, because even saying it makes me feel like it can't possibly be true. Both sides of my family have had these strange things happen for years, but they don't talk to each other about it. My father's family keeps their distance from my mother's family, and somehow the only connection between those two worlds is me, my mother, and my sister. And over time, we started noticing a pattern that was hard to ignore. It felt like something was following our bloodline. Not haunting us exactly, just taking things, moving them, putting them in places that made no sense at all. On my father's side, it started years ago in our old family home. My father's older brother, my Uncle Raghav, was the one it seemed to focus on. He was a very particular man, very routine-driven. He always kept his scooter keys in the exact same place, every single day. Then one day, they disappeared. At first, nobody thought much of it. But then it happened again, and again. After a while, it had happened so many times that everyone in the house started accusing each other. It felt like someone had to be playing a joke, except nobody was laughing. Finally, my uncle got a duplicate key made. He was frustrated, and I think he wanted to prove that he wasn't imagining things. So one evening, he placed that new key right in front of the prayer room, the one place in the house everyone treated with the most respect. Then he stepped into his bedroom for just a moment. When he came back, the key was gone. Just gone. After that, other things of his started disappearing too. His phone, his heart tablets, small personal things, always his. It kept happening until he passed away about 4 years ago. And after that, everything stopped. Or at least, that's what we thought. Then last year, we were out in the garden planting a sapling. The soil there was hard and untouched, really packed down. We were digging maybe 2 feet deep when the shovel struck something solid. We thought it was a stone. It wasn't. We pulled out my uncle's old phone. The same phone that had vanished years earlier from inside the house. It was buried deep in the ground, under soil no one had disturbed. And I still can't explain how something could disappear from a table indoors and end up underground in the garden like it had been hidden there forever. Now, on my mother's side, the pattern was different, but just as strange. In her family home, phones used to go missing all the time, especially during family get-togethers. Somebody would set a phone down, turn around, and it would be gone. We'd call it, and it would ring, but the sound never seemed to come from inside the house. And then later, after everyone had searched everywhere, we'd find the missing phone outside, in the drainage pipes. Not once or twice, again and again. Naturally, the adults blamed the children, but the kids were always frightened, genuinely frightened, and they kept insisting they hadn't touched anything. After several incidents, it just stopped on its own, as suddenly as it had started. And then something happened more recently that shook me even more, because this time, I was right in the middle of it. My cousin lives in Palakkad. About 6 months ago, he lost his wallet. There wasn't any cash in it, just his ID card and a few bank cards. So after a while, everyone assumed he had dropped it somewhere, and that was the end of it. Then last week, my mother, my sister, and I went to Kochi. At first, that sounded normal enough. Then my cousin said, "But I'm still in Palakkad. Aren't you in Kochi today?" The man said he's in Kochi. And I just froze, because at that exact moment, I was standing right across the road from that exact jewelry store. Out of all the days, out of all the places in Kochi, out of every possible coincidence, I was there. Right there. So I walked across, met the man, and he handed me my cousin's wallet. The wallet that had vanished from a house in Palakkad months earlier. The wallet that somehow turned up over 140 kilometers away. The wallet that appeared directly in front of me on the one day I happened to be standing there. That's the part that stays with me. My father's side doesn't know about the wallet. My mother's side doesn't know about the phone we dug out of the earth. These stories live separately in different corners of our family. But me, my mother, and my sister, we know all of them. And when you put them together, it starts to feel like more than coincidence. I don't know what it is. I don't know how a phone vanishes from inside a locked home and ends up buried underground years later. I don't know how a wallet travels across cities and waits for me to arrive. I don't know why these things seem to happen around the same bloodline, across both sides of the family, as though something unseen keeps reaching into our lives and rearranging them. But sometimes I think about it like this, as if something is still there, quiet and patient, moving things just enough to remind us it can. Not to steal, not to hurt, just to let us know it's watching. I've always thought of myself as a skeptic, really. I'm the kind of person who needs to see something with my own eyes before I believe it. Years ago, I even had a conversation with my granddad about it, because he knew I'd always been drawn to the paranormal, the unexplained, all the strange and unsettling things people can't quite make sense of. I remember saying to him, "Granddad, when you pass, if there really is an afterlife, please send me a clear sign so I'll know it's you." But nothing ever happened. Not from him, not from any of my grandparents, and I was so close to them all. So for the longest time, I stayed in that skeptical place. Then life started putting stories in front of me that I just couldn't explain away. About 8 years ago, a close friend of mine lost her sister in the most horrific way imaginable. She had gone traveling from the UK to Thailand with a male friend, and the two of them were killed there. What happened to her was absolutely brutal. She was treated with such cruelty, and her injuries were so severe that she had to be identified through dental records. It was devastating. I had actually met her sister before, while we were both in hospital dealing with the same neurological condition. She was one of those people who really cared. She worked so hard to warn other backpackers about the dangers in that area, because there had already been so many suspicious deaths connected to that island. After she died, My friend started experiencing all sorts of strange things that honestly made my skin crawl. And then something even more tragic happened. My friend herself, who had the same health condition as me, was in hospital with what should have been manageable issues, nothing that seemed life-threatening. But she died suddenly. And not just suddenly. She died on the exact same date her sister had been taken from the world, 5 years later, to the day. She was only 35. During the post-mortem, they discovered she had been pregnant and didn't know it. They never found a clear reason for her death. In the end, it was recorded as sudden natural causes. I still think about her parents. The grief they carried was just unbearable. She had told me things before she died, stories about what she'd experienced after losing her sister, and she was not the kind of person to invent things. Not for attention, not for comfort. She was grounded, honest, and what she shared with me stayed with me. Then, about a year later, another friend of mine lost her daughter. She was only 19. She took her own life, and her mom was the one who found her when she came home from work. I can't even put into words how awful that was. Her daughter had been training to become a nurse, and because of that, her mom always associated this strong hospital disinfectant smell with her, especially when she came home from shifts. She hated bringing that smell into the house, so she kept a bottle of her favorite perfume, Angel, in the car and would spray herself before going back inside. After her daughter passed, she started noticing things. She told me there were moments when she could suddenly smell that exact mix, hospital disinfectant and Angel perfume, so strongly and so randomly that she just knew her daughter was near. I remember thinking how unlikely that sounded, especially because it was February. It was bitterly cold, snowing even. The kind of weather where you'd never expect to see a butterfly at all. We sat down on the bench and started talking about her daughter. My friend got emotional, and as soon as she started crying, the air around us filled with that exact scent, disinfectant and Angel perfume, both so strong that it stopped me in my tracks. I knew the perfume well myself, so there was no mistaking it. Then the butterfly appeared. And not just any butterfly. It was exactly the one my friend had described to me before we arrived, with the same striking colors and markings. It came right over and landed gently on her hand while she was crying and talking to her daughter, telling her how much she missed her, how much she loved her. And it stayed there. Not for a few seconds, not for a minute, but for around 25 minutes. I just sat there in disbelief. My friend looked at it and softly said, "I love you, Poppy. Thank you for coming to see me." Eventually, we had to leave to go pick the children up from school, and I swear that butterfly followed us the whole way back to the car. That was the moment something shifted in me, because up until then, I'd always needed proof. And there I was, witnessing something with my own eyes that I simply couldn't rationalize. My friend later told me that every single time she visits, that same butterfly appears within minutes, no matter the season, no matter the weather. Rain, cold, even winter, it still comes. And unless I'm mistaken, butterflies don't survive like that for years on end, especially not in freezing temperatures. So now I do believe. Maybe not in a neat, certain way where I have all the answers, but I believe there's something. What I've noticed, or at least what it feels like, is that people who pass away peacefully, through old age or natural causes, seem to move on somehow. Where to, I honestly don't know. But the people who die in sudden, violent, or deeply tragic ways, they seem to linger. Maybe they stay because justice hasn't been done. Maybe they stay to watch over the people they love. Maybe it's both. I really can't say. All I know is that the people who told me these things were not people who would make them up. And in one case, I saw it for myself. That's what changed me. That's what made me believe there are signs if we're willing to notice them. And I still find myself wondering why it seems to happen more with tragic deaths than peaceful ones. It fascinates me, honestly. And ever since then, I've wanted to know if other people have experienced anything like this too. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How was your day? Did everything go smoothly? It's finally my favorite time of day, sitting here and sharing my paranormal experiences with all of you. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel and for sending in so many of your own stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our latest videos. Now get cozy in bed, switch on your nightlight, and let's listen to today's paranormal experiences together. So, this happened to me more than 10 years ago, which means I was probably 9, maybe 10. Back then, our house layout was kind of weird in a way that's hard to explain unless you've walked it. It was like a loop. You could start in the kitchen and dining area, go through one door into my dad's music room, cut through into my parents' bedroom, then take this long hallway past all the kids' rooms, and boom, you'd end up back where you started. Like the house was one big circle you could keep walking forever if you wanted. Anyway, it was a Sunday morning, and my older sister, Nadia, and I were getting ready for church. I remember I was in the dining area eating cereal, but not sitting like a normal person. I was standing at the counter, half awake, shoveling bites in like I had somewhere important to be. Nadia was nearby fussing with her hair in the mirror, doing that concentrated stare people do when they're trying to get a ponytail perfect. And then we heard it. This rapid click, click, click sound, like a dog running on tile with nails that haven't been trimmed in way too long. The door between the dining area and the music room was wide open, and I swear on everything, I saw something dart out of the music room. It was gray, skinny, low to the ground. It moved so fast, but my brain latched onto these sharp details. Long limbs, a bony spine, the way it ran on all fours like it didn't want to be seen upright. It slid right under our dining table like it had done it 100 times. And the first thing that flashed in my mind, this is so specific but I can't unsee it, was Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Like that vibe. Not exactly the same, just that same kind of wrong-looking thinness, only smaller, almost like a child-sized version. I couldn't see its face. It was hunched and moving too quickly, like it knew I was watching and didn't care. For a second, I just froze, spoon in my mouth, because my brain was trying to decide whether I'd actually seen something or if I was still half dreaming. Then I looked at Nadia, and she was staring too, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. This expression like, "Please tell me you saw that." So I knew I wasn't imagining it. I put my cereal down on the nearest counter so fast I nearly spilled it, and I just ran. Nadia ran with me. We bolted out of the dining room and down that long hallway, using the loop of the house like an escape route, straight to my parents' bedroom. We burst in there talking over each other, breathless, panicked, trying to explain. Something gray, something crawling, something under the table. And I started crying. Like real crying. Not "I'm upset" crying. More like my body was dumping fear out through my face because it didn't know what else to do. My mom, Marisol, sat up, confused, and she did that calm parent voice right away. She was like, Hey, don't worry. It was me. I was looking for something." She told us she'd lost a microphone and was crawling around trying to find it. Which, I mean, sure, if you want to say that out loud. But Nadia and I just looked at each other like, no, that was not our mother. We both knew. The movement wasn't human. The shape wasn't right. And also, no offense to Marisol, but my mom was not out here scuttling like a hairless gremlin under the dining table at church o'clock. Nadia hated talking about anything she couldn't explain. That's just how she is. If it doesn't fit into a box, she'd rather never open the lid again. So the story kind of died. We grew up. Life moved on. We didn't bring it up much. Until about 3 years ago, and my mom's face changed. Not like she was annoyed. Not like she didn't remember. More like she remembered too well. And that's when she finally admitted, okay, it wasn't me. She said she only told us that because we were little and terrified, and she wanted to make us feel safe. But there was something else behind her eyes, like she was choosing her words carefully. So I pushed a little, and Nadia, even though she hates this stuff, pushed too. And finally my mom told us why she'd lied so quickly. Because she had seen it before. My parents built that house in the early 2000s. When they first moved in, my dad was working late nights, so for the first few days my mom would be there alone at night. She said she kept feeling this heavy dread, like the air in the house was pressing down on her. That kind of fear that doesn't come from a thought. It just shows up in your body like it belongs there. Then one night, she said she heard that same sound. Nails on tile. Clicking, fast, moving. And it sounded like it was coming from near the closet, close to the music room side of the house. She told us she woke up and couldn't move, like her body was locked in place. She could open her eyes, she could breathe, but she couldn't sit up or turn her head the way she wanted. And at the foot of the bed, she saw it. Not a blur, not a shadow. A small figure. A little man, she said. Gray, hairless, just standing there, watching her. She told us she squeezed her eyes shut and started praying. Not even like a polite prayer, more like a desperate, God, please help me kind of prayer. And she kept praying until she fell asleep. After that, she said it never happened again, at least not to her, until the morning Nadia and I came running into her room, sobbing, describing the exact same thing. And I remember sitting there as an adult hearing this, and feeling my stomach drop in the exact same way it did when I was a kid. Like my body recognized the truth before my brain did. Because it wasn't just something weird we saw once. It was, my mom saw it first. In the same house, with the same sound, the same description. I told her, why didn't you ever tell us? And she just looked torn, like she'd carried it for years and didn't want to hand it to us too. I'll be honest with you, I've had a couple other experiences that feel similar, and I don't even know what to do with that. I go back and forth between trying to rationalize it and realizing some things don't neatly fit into rational explanations. And yeah, I looked up possible explanations over time. One that really got under my skin was duende, because the second I read about it, I got that sick, sinking feeling like, oh, that's what it felt like. I don't know what it was. I just know what I saw. And I know my sister saw it too. Hey. So before I tell you this, I just want to be really clear about something. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm not here to prove the paranormal is real. I just want to share something that happened to me. Something I still can't shake. So, my name is Caio. I'm Brazilian, and I grew up around an Afro-Brazilian spiritual tradition where mediumship isn't some rare, dramatic thing. It's just part of life. Like, normal. People in my family would incorporate spirits during rituals, and you'd hear prayers and songs and all that in the house like it was everyday background noise. But my experience has always been a little different. Most of my relatives connect through incorporation. Me? I've always been the one who sees. And I don't mean gets a feeling. I mean I can actually see them, and sometimes talk to them like they're standing right there. My mom, Renata, is the most spiritually advanced person I've ever met. She's basically a leader in our religion, the kind of person who's so connected that it doesn't even seem weird when you hear her speaking out loud to spirits while she's cooking or folding clothes. That was just my childhood. This happened when I was around, somewhere between 11 and 13. We were having money problems, so the sleeping arrangements got cramped. I ended up sharing a room with my older sister, she's adopted, and my cousin who had moved in with us for a while. Back then, I didn't fully understand what was going on with my cousin. I only learned later that she'd struggled with drugs and had been trying to quit. But she was slipping again around that time. And I swear to you, the atmosphere around her was heavy. Like the air felt dirty. Everything about that period had this energy, even when nothing was happening. Anyway, one night in the middle of summer, I went to bed like always. Nothing unusual. And then, I woke up. Not slowly, not groggy. I snapped awake like my body had hit an alarm. I remember looking at my phone because I needed to anchor myself in something real, and the time was 3:07 a.m. I still remember that so clearly, like it got carved into my brain. And the first thing I felt was this pressure, like something was pressing down on my entire presence. Not physically. It wasn't like someone was on top of me. It was more like that primal fear your body produces when it thinks you're about to die. Like your instincts are screaming, you are not safe. I turned my head and scanned the room, trying to convince myself it was just a nightmare. And then I looked toward my cousin's bed, and I saw it. There was something standing over her, something tall, way too tall. It didn't look like a person. No hair, no real features I could make out. Just this stretched, shadow-like form, like darkness shaped into a body by the little bits of light in the room. It wasn't transparent. It wasn't misty. It looked present. I froze, and I just stared. I couldn't even think. My mind went blank except for one thought repeating over and over. Don't react. Don't react. Don't react. Minutes passed. I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like forever. I remember checking the time again later and realizing I had been staring for something like 20 minutes, maybe more, hoping it would vanish the way some things do. But it didn't. And that's when I realized something that made it even worse. I wasn't paralyzed. I could move. So I started thinking maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was my brain playing tricks on me. And then I remembered something my mom had told me since I was little. Like a rule you live by when you grow up seeing things other people don't. Basically, don't acknowledge. Don't feed it. Don't make yourself a target. So I forced myself to get up like everything was normal. My hands were shaking, but I acted casual, like I was just thirsty. I went to the kitchen, drank water, and splashed my face. I did it a few times, kind of like a ritual. Like if I reset my body, maybe I'd reset my vision too. Then I walked back to the room, and when I looked again, it wasn't over my cousin anymore. It was standing over my sister, just watching her sleep. And that contrast, oh my God, it messed me up. My sister looked so calm, so safe, so innocent in that moment. And that thing was just looming over her like it owned the space. I got back into bed, trying to breathe quietly, trying to act like I didn't notice it. But I couldn't stop watching from the corner of my eye. I stayed awake for what felt like hours, my whole body tight, waiting for the moment it would move again. Eventually, I must have drifted off from pure exhaustion. And then I woke up again. And it was over me, right above my bed. Not across the room, not near someone else. Me. And I could feel that it was looking directly at my face. I wanted to scream so badly my throat hurt. but I remembered my mom's voice. I remembered the rule. Fear makes you visible. Fear opens doors. Fear is like shouting, "I see you, I see you, I see you." So I didn't scream. I shut my eyes as hard as I could and I just cried. Silent. Hot tears running into my ears. I was just a kid, trying to survive the night by pretending nothing was happening. When morning came, the sun hit the room and everything was normal. Birds, light, regular sounds in the house. My cousin got up like always. My sister was fine. Nobody mentioned anything. Nobody seemed to feel it but me. And I never saw that exact entity again. But I'll tell you this. Out of everything I've seen in my life, all the spirits, all the presences, all the strange moments, that was the only one that made me feel truly, genuinely unsafe. And even now, whenever I sense something that feels wrong, something cold, something predatory, I remember my mom's advice, and I pretend I don't see it. Okay, so I'm not totally sure if this is something genuinely strange, or if it's just my brain playing the world's most annoying game of coincidence. For about a year now, it's been happening on and off. I'll have a dream, and then the next day, something from that dream shows up in real life. Not in a dramatic, I predicted the lottery numbers way. More like these weird, pointless little moments that don't actually change anything. Except they make me feel unsettled. And lately it feels like it's happening more often. Like one time, I swear this is real. I dreamed I walked into the staff break room at work, and sitting at this tiny table were these two famous brothers, the Hawthorne brothers, just casually having coffee like they belonged there. And even in the dream, I remember thinking, wait, don't they hate each other? It felt so random. The next morning I wake up, still half asleep, and the first thing I do is scroll social media. First post I see? A headline about their band announcing this huge reunion tour. And what makes it creepier is I'm not even a die-hard fan. I don't listen to them constantly. They weren't on my mind. It was just there. Dream first, then reality. But the one that really got me was about our puppies. We had two little pups, Miso and Clover, and they were due to be spayed. The night before, I dreamed I was talking to my dad, Martin, and he said they couldn't do the surgery because the puppies were all fused together inside, and they'd need a specialist. I woke up feeling gross about it, but I told myself, okay, I'm just anxious. That's all this is. Still, that morning I told my dad about the dream, kind of joking, kind of not. And then I told one of my clients about it too, mostly because I wanted to say it out loud and laugh it off like it was nothing. And then, this is the part that makes my stomach flip even now. My client is leaving, and we both see my dad out on the driveway. And he tells me, they couldn't do the spay. One puppy had something like a false pregnancy going on, and the other, they'd started the operation and found that everything inside was all tangled and not where it should be. The vet had stopped and said she'd need to see a specialist. My client actually froze and went, "Oh my God, didn't you literally just tell me that dream?" I was honestly relieved I'd told someone beforehand, because otherwise it would have sounded like I was making it up after the fact. But at the same time, I felt sick, because I hadn't made it up. I'd dreamed it. Even the money part was weird. In the dream, my dad said the specialist would cost £1,600 for both pups. In reality, the one puppy who actually saw the specialist cost £800. The second puppy hasn't been spayed since, so I still don't even know if she has the same issue or not. Which, honestly, makes my brain want to spiral if I let it. And then there was another one, more recent, that wasn't even connected to anything practical, just emotionally disturbing. I told my mom I dreamed my sister Eliza was pregnant again. And separately, my sister told our mom she dreamed I was pregnant, except in her dream, the baby didn't survive. We both had those dreams the same night, the night before. Completely unconnected, like neither of us prompted the other. And it's not like it makes sense either. I don't plan on having kids, and she doesn't have any immediate plans for another one. So why would we both dream something like that, on the same night, about each other? And that's the thing. Most of these dreams are random and pointless. They don't do anything. They don't warn me of something I can stop. They don't give me some heroic message. They just show up, and then life mirrors them back at me like it's winking. But I'm at the point now where I don't know what to do with it mentally. Because when the dreams are harmless, like some celebrity reunion, fine, whatever. But when I have a horrible dream about someone getting sick, or dying, or something going wrong, I wake up anxious, and I don't know if I'm supposed to treat it like nonsense or like a sign. And I don't even know what I believe in, so I don't know what sign would even mean. I just know it makes me tense and scared, like I'm waiting for something awful to happen. And to make it even more complicated, my dad has had this kind of thing his whole life. These small, strange dreams that seem to happen the next day. Usually pointless stuff, but enough that when I told him about mine, he didn't laugh. He just kind of nodded like, yeah, that happens. So I'm left sitting with this weird question that I can't quite shake. Is this just my brain noticing patterns and getting lucky with timing? Or is something genuinely odd going on? And more than anything, I just want to know if other people have experienced this too, because I'm starting to feel nervous every time I wake up from a dream that feels too specific. So, a couple weeks ago, my friend Maya came over, just to hang out. Nothing weird, totally normal night. At one point, I went to the bathroom, and she stayed out in the hallway waiting for me. Later, after she'd gone home, she texted me something like, "Okay, don't freak out," and I could tell she was hesitating, like she didn't want to plant something scary in my head. She told me the hallway felt noticeably colder than the rest of the house, and not just old house drafty cold, more like the air had weight to it. She said she had this intense feeling that something was there with her, like a presence leaning in close, almost hovering over her shoulder. And the reason that unsettled me so much is because it wasn't even the first time the hallway had done something like that. About a year before Maya ever came over, I was home alone one day. Quiet house, nothing on, just me and my dog. And then I heard it. A man's voice coming from the hallway. Not muffled, not far away, like someone was actually standing there talking. My stomach dropped so fast. I genuinely thought someone had broken in. I had my phone in my hand ready to call the police, and I was trying to stay calm and listen. Like, what do I do right now? And then my dog. She didn't bark. She didn't growl. She didn't run. She just froze, like statue still, staring straight toward the hallway. And that part is what made it 10 times worse, because my brain immediately went, she sees him. She's looking at the man. I checked the entire house, closets, rooms, behind doors, everything. And then I checked again because I didn't trust it. No one was there. Nothing was open. Nothing was disturbed. Just empty. After Maya told me what she felt, I brought it up to my dad. I wasn't even dramatic about it. I was just like, hey, this is going to sound weird, but Maya said the hallway felt off. And my dad just kind of nodded, like it wasn't surprising. He told me he's felt it too, like a presence in the hallway. And he's also heard a man's voice before. Except he said to him it sounded older than what I heard, like a more elderly man. That's when it stopped feeling like a one-off moment, or maybe I imagined it, and started feeling like, okay, this is a pattern. So I did what I knew to do. I cleansed the house with white sage, opened all the windows, tried to make it feel light and fresh, told myself I was clearing everything out. And honestly, for a while, it did feel calmer, like the air in the house wasn't so tense. But then 2 nights ago, my dad told me something that made my skin go cold. He said he woke up around 2 a.m., and the second he opened his eyes, he felt this wave of dread. Not like anxiety about something in life, like that deep instinctual dread where your body is screaming something is wrong. He said he felt like something was watching him from the hallway, like it was just standing there, paying attention. And the thing is, our current house doesn't have some creepy history we know about. The couple who owned it before us built it themselves. They're still alive. They're the only people who lived here before we did. No big tragic story attached to the place. Nothing that would make you immediately go, oh, that explains it. But here's the part that complicates everything. When my dad was younger, years and years ago, not even in this house, he used to be curious about the other side. The stuff people don't understand. The things you're not supposed to invite in. But he has this belief that's always stuck with him. Once you open a door, it never fully closes. And that hits hard because our last house was bad. Like genuinely, heavily haunted. Both of us would see things. Not maybe I saw something in the corner of my eye, but things that made you stop breathing for a second. The energy in that place was heavy and dark, and when I say dark, I mean it felt mean, like it wanted you uncomfortable. We tried everything back then. We saged, we prayed, we did all the normal things. We even had someone come cleanse it, someone who claimed they knew what they were doing. Nothing worked. And what's terrifying is that in that last house, most of the things I experienced were also in the hallway. So now I'm sitting here wondering if this is something my dad unknowingly brought with him, like it latched on a long time ago. Or if this house already had something here that's just reacting to us being here. Because in this house, for a long time, I didn't really sense anything directly. It was more like I'd randomly feel uneasy, like I was being watched. But I didn't have big experiences. Until the voice. Until Maya. Until my dad waking up at 2 a.m. with that dread. And I asked him something after he told me, because I needed to know. I said, when you felt it watching you, was it just a presence? Or did it feel negative? And he didn't hesitate. He said it felt a little negative. Bad. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I've already saged the house. We burn incense pretty often. We try to keep things calm and positive. But this hallway thing keeps showing itself just enough to make me wonder if it's getting stronger, or if it's been here the whole time and we're only now noticing. And honestly, I don't know what to do next. I just know it doesn't feel like nothing anymore. So, right after high school, I was playing in this scrappy little garage band with a couple friends. Me, Jonah on bass, and Maya on guitar. We somehow stumbled into the most ridiculous practice space you could imagine. This giant old house the state had renovated. The upstairs had been turned into county offices, but the downstairs was basically untouched. Big rooms, high ceilings, thick doors. The kind of place that somehow makes even a cheap amp sound expensive. Jonah's grandparents, Evelyn and Frank, worked there. Like, worked there. They were the only two people running the place most days. And for whatever reason, they trusted us. They'd lock up for the evening, wave us in like we belonged, and let us rehearse downstairs after hours. We could play loud, record, stash our gear, all of it, completely free. I still don't know how we got that lucky. The house itself felt like a mansion someone tried to make cozy. Built sometime in the 60s, I think. Hardwood floors, heavy trim, wide staircases, and this weird, clean smell that never quite matched how old it was. And the acoustics, oh my God. Everything rang in a way that made you want to keep playing just to hear it bounce back at you. But there was always this feeling. Not like footsteps or cold spots or anything you'd see in a movie. Just this lingering sense that the building was aware of you. Like you were guests, and it hadn't decided whether it liked you yet. We ignored it because, come on, free practice space in a beautiful building? We weren't about to get picky. We played there for a couple years, mostly at night. And as a group, we had a few small moments that made us glance at each other like, did you feel that? But nothing really compared to what happened to me one night. It was a normal rehearsal. Loud, sweaty, excited. One of those nights where a new song is almost taking shape, and you can feel it starting to breathe. After a while, we took a break. Jonah was fussing with his tuning. Maya was digging through a notebook of lyrics, and I said something classy like, I gotta pee, and got up. We were set up in this big room with the best sound. From where my drum kit was, there was a long hallway behind me that led toward the garage. At the very end of that hallway was this tiny bathroom. Just a small door, a little sink, basic stuff. I'd walked down there 100 times. It was always dark, sure, but it was familiar. So I start down the hallway, half thinking about the beat we'd been working on, half hurrying because I wanted to get back and keep playing. And I'm telling you, when I was just a few steps from that bathroom door, I stopped like I'd hit an invisible wall. Nothing touched me. No wind, no sound, no footsteps. It wasn't physical. It was a feeling. But not like nervousness, not like being spooked. It was anger. This sudden, sharp, unmistakable anger that felt like it was right in my face, like something I couldn't see was leaning into my space, furious, and daring me to take one more step. I froze, totally frozen. My stomach dropped and my whole body went tight, like my brain hit some ancient emergency switch. And the message was so clear it might as well have been shouted. Don't. Not maybe you shouldn't. Not you're scaring yourself. It was a hard, final, absolute do not. I stood there for a second, trying to force myself to rationalize it, trying to be normal. But the closer I even thought about taking another step, the more intense that rage felt. Like it would punish me for pushing it. Just, okay. Then I turned around and walked back down the hallway, as calmly as I could manage, like I wasn't completely rattled. When I got back into the room, Jonah and Maya were still doing their thing, chatting like nothing in the world was wrong. I tried to play it cool, but I know my face gave me away. They asked what happened and I told them, kind of stumbling over the words, that something didn't want me in that hallway. That I was walking to the bathroom and this presence shut it down, like I'd been warned. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. But I swear it wasn't imagination spiraling. There was no creeping, I scared myself buildup. It was instant, like flipping a switch. I ended up going upstairs to use the bathroom near the offices, where the lights were brighter and everything felt more normal. And even then, I kept thinking about that moment, how precise it was, how personal it felt, like I'd crossed into someone's space without permission. And here's the thing, we weren't drinking, we weren't getting high. We treated those sessions like work. We were so careful, quiet when we arrived, respectful, cleaned up after ourselves, because we knew how rare it was to have a place like that. We didn't want to risk losing it. Later, out of curiosity, we tried to look into the building's history. Anything, fires, deaths, Some headline, some story that would make it all click into place. Nothing. At least nothing we could find. Eventually, life shifted the way it does. People moved, schedules changed, the band kind of scattered. We left town. Years later, I heard the house was abandoned again, like it just slipped back into silence once nobody was officially using it. And I still think about that hallway sometimes. I still feel it in my chest when I remember it. That pure, wordless rage. That hard line in the air that said, "Not tonight. Not ever." I've never felt anything like it before or since. And honestly, I really hope I never do again. Hey, before I start, I need you to know something about me. I'm not some paranormal investigator with gadgets and a YouTube channel. I'm just a person who's had a lot of personal experiences, and I've always been kind of sensitive to it. Maybe it's because I've lost everyone in my family over the years. Maybe that opened something up in me, or maybe it just made me pay attention in a different way. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I see something peeking around a door, a window, a wall, whatever, my first reaction is not calm curiosity. I don't go, "Ah, yes, fascinating." I get scared, like real stomach-drop fear. And I think that's normal. Our bodies are literally built to notice weird patterns and react fast. That's survival wiring. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. What if we're not the only ones trying to survive? What if the things we call unseen are moving through their own version of existence, whatever that even means, and they're navigating fear too? Because after a handful of encounters across my life, I've started to believe something that sounds simple, but it kind of flipped everything for me. I think they peak for the same reason we peak: curiosity and vulnerability. Like, think about it. If something wanted to terrify you, it wouldn't hide behind a door frame at a weird angle. It could just step right into the middle of the room and commit. But instead, it's usually this half-visible, cautious, almost hesitant presence, like it's putting a barrier between you and it. And we always assume visibility means power, right? Like if it can show itself, it must be strong. But what if it's the opposite? What if being visible is when they're more exposed? So peeking is a way to stay protected. Like, I'm here, but not too here. And honestly, I wonder sometimes if our fear response is useful to them too. Like if we freeze or back away, maybe that's enough for them to set a boundary. Almost like the message is, "Don't come in here." That might explain why they show up from those strange places, like the top corner of a doorway or the edge of a high window. It feels eerie, but it's also strategic, out of reach, safer. And I also don't think what we see is necessarily what they are. Their appearance could be our brain trying to interpret something it doesn't have a template for, or it could be them choosing a form we'll recognize, or both. I genuinely don't know. None of us can really know. But I do know this. It doesn't mean I'm going to stroll up to one if I see it. Because listen, if you were hiding behind something, and the person you were afraid of suddenly rushed toward you, even if you weren't trying to hurt them, you'd probably defend yourself. Animals do the same thing. That instinct is everywhere. So if these entities are real, and if they're vulnerable in their own way, it makes sense they'd react similarly. And there's another piece to this that I don't hear people talk about enough. If they can affect our energy, we can probably affect theirs too. Maybe that's why so many encounters happen when people are alone, or already feeling raw, like grief, exhaustion, stress. Those states might change something about us that makes us easier to notice, or harder to ignore. And maybe they don't want to be around us any more than we want to be around them. Maybe we feel overwhelming. Maybe we're loud to them, emotionally. Okay, so here's where this gets personal. Anyway, old buildings, old shelters especially, they hold a kind of weight, not just dust and peeling paint, emotional weight, because people pass through those places during the hardest chapters of their lives. And sometimes, people don't make it out of those chapters. A few weeks back, I was staying briefly in this really old support shelter, nearly 100 years old at least. They've renovated it here and there, but it's mostly patch on top of patch, like the building is holding itself together out of habit. And the moment I walked in, I felt it. The air was heavy, not physically, more like emotionally, like grief soaked into the walls, like the place remembered too much. One night, I was asleep in the women's ward, 5 of us in the room, and I'm a light sleeper, always have been. I snapped awake because I felt movement, like someone shifting near the doorway. And immediately, I felt that presence feeling. You know the one, when the room feels occupied even if you can't explain why. I looked toward the open doorway and saw what looked like an older man's face and shoulder, just barely visible, peeking in. Not fully stepping in, just watching. And my mind went, that makes no sense, because this was the women's area. The odds of an elderly man wandering around in there at night were basically none. The light switch was right beside my bed, so I reached over and flicked it on. Instantly, gone. No footsteps, no shuffle, no shadow retreating. Just absence. And I laid there with my heart pounding, trying to talk myself out of it, trying to convince myself it was a half dream. But deep down, what it actually reinforced was that idea I keep circling back to. They don't usually want confrontation either. It felt less like a threat and more like a cautious check-in, like curiosity that got too close. And I swear, part of me almost laughed afterward because I imagined the other side of it. Like maybe it was thinking, wait, she can see me? And panicked right back out of sight. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I'm still scared when it happens. I don't think that makes me weak. I think it makes me human. But I also can't shake the feeling that sometimes the thing peeking from the doorway isn't a predator. Sometimes it might be something just as startled as we are. And I really do want to know what you think about that. So, I want to tell you something really personal, and I'm trusting you with it. For as long as I can remember, my family's had a lot of mental illness and trauma running through it, like this heavy thread woven into everything. And for me, it showed up in a bunch of diagnoses over the years: major depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD, and eventually psychosis. The kind that doesn't just feel off, but terrifying. It got so bad that I ended up being involuntarily admitted to a psych ward. And I'm not saying that lightly. It was brutal. I was hearing this constant voice, always there, feeding me disgusting thoughts, twisting everything, telling me I should kill myself. It felt relentless, like I couldn't get even one quiet moment to breathe. Around that time, I was taking a stimulant I'd been prescribed, Adderall XR, and honestly, I think it made things worse. I'd also been smoking weed a lot before all this, but the scariest part was, even after I quit, the psychosis didn't just disappear. It lingered. Weeks went by and the voice was still there, like it had planted itself in me. And the truth is, I couldn't find a neat, sensible explanation for why it started, or why it later eased up. But I'm going to tell you what I believe was really happening. Because when you go through trauma and abuse, you start reaching for comfort anywhere you can find it, even if it's wrecking you. For me, it was stuff I'm not proud of: drinking, hookups, porn, getting high, chasing anything that made me feel less empty for 5 minutes. And I got pulled into friendships that were basically built on shared pain, like we were keeping each other afloat by drowning together. I started a lot of that in early teens, and it just snowballed until I hit about 16, and everything cracked wide open. That's when I got obsessed with tarot and spiritual stuff. I'd always been curious about it, even as a kid, but this was different. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was like a hunger, a fixation. I started thinking I was getting messages, like a voice, or flashes in my mind, and I convinced myself it was something good, a guide, the universe, something light. And I'm not going to drag you through every detail, but I'll tell you this. That voice didn't lead me to healing. It led me to shame. It pushed me into lustful, degrading choices, things that made me feel like I was losing pieces of myself. And what really terrified me was how controlling it became. It would tell me what to do, and if I resisted, it would threaten me, like this pressure in my head, this fear that something awful would happen if I didn't obey. Meanwhile, I was also rambling to my friends about God being real, while I was completely out of my mind. That's the part that's so wild looking back. I even called my whole family to the house once and tried to convince them I had psychic abilities. And when they didn't agree, I yelled at them, like full-on arguing, crying, accusing them of not seeing the truth. I was deep in delusion. After the psych ward, life didn't magically get better. I came home and my dad treated me like I was fragile and dangerous at the same time. He literally watched me take my meds multiple times a day to make sure I didn't skip them. I'd lost my friends, no job. I'd stopped showing up to school a long time before, and I was alone with this torment, 24/7. Even sleep didn't feel like rest, because my mind wouldn't let me go. I was depressed, angry, exhausted, and I was suicidal. And then there was this moment, this one specific moment. I can still picture it like it's a photograph. So I said something like, "God, if you're real, please help me. I can't do this." And listen, I know how this sounds to some people, but what happened next felt more real than anything I'd ever experienced. It was like warmth and presence filled the room, like I wasn't alone anymore, like I was being held, safe, seen, loved, without having to earn it. I can't fully explain it, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. It just felt like a father wrapping his arms around a child who's been crying too long. After that, things started shifting. I got my first Bible, and this is where it gets hard to describe without sounding unbelievable. But I'm telling you what I lived. I would try to read, and my body would react. Like convulsions, my stomach tightening, my spine jolting. This burning anxiety-like feeling that would flare up and twist through me. It felt like something in me hated what I was doing. And slowly, I started believing that the core issue wasn't just chemical. I'm not saying mental illness isn't real. I'm saying in my case, I felt like there was something spiritual tangled up in it. Something dark that had gotten invited in through the stuff I was playing with. I remembered this verse. The sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to be participants with demons. So I made a choice that scared me. I stopped taking the medication. Not because I thought I was invincible. Honestly, I was terrified. But I felt this conviction in my chest like, this isn't the route. My family begged me not to. The psychiatrist wanted me back on a strict plan. But when I tried to schedule follow-ups, the appointment got canceled. She was out for personal reasons, and everything just stalled. My dad kept pushing. The pressure stayed heavy, and I had to cling to what I believed God was doing in me. And now, it's been almost a year since that whole nightmare. I'm not here pretending I'm perfect. I'm still healing. I still have things I'm working through. But the constant voice, it's gone. The crushing depression, it lifted. The suicidal thoughts that used to scream at me, they're not running my life anymore. Sometimes after I read scripture, my head feels so quiet, like actual peace. Not numbness, not sedation. Peace, the kind no pill ever gave me. and my life has changed in ways I honestly didn't think were possible back then. I've been holding down a job. I went back to school. I quit drugs, vaping, alcohol, porn, things I used to cling to like life rafts. And for the first time in a long time, I actually feel like I have purpose. Because there was this void in me, this ache. And I tried to fill it with everything: pleasure, attention, escape, spiritual power, anything. But nothing even comes close to what I felt in God's presence. That love, steady, holy, real, did something to me that I can't fake. When I look back now, I'm honestly stunned. Stunned by grace. By the fact that I was protected even when I wasn't looking for protection. Even when I didn't believe. Even when I was messing with things that harmed me. And I don't expect everyone to understand this. I really don't. But if you're still listening, thank you. I mean that. I hope nobody has to go through the kind of hell I went through to reach for God. I hope people can find Him before it gets that dark. But if you feel broken or ashamed or like you're too messed up to come to Him, please hear me. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Because God didn't send His Son into the world to condemn it, but so the world could be saved through Him. So, I'm a first year in college now, but this happened a long time ago, back when I was in 7th grade. And I swear, it still sneaks into my thoughts when the house is quiet and I'm trying to fall asleep. It was this cold night in early December, maybe around 8:30. My mom, Marissa, my little brother Eli, my sister Paige, and I had just gotten back from the discount store in town. You know the kind. Bright lights, cheap snacks, random kitchen stuff you didn't plan on buying. We pulled into our driveway and started hauling bags out of the trunk. And just so you can picture it, our house was way out in the back roads, like really out there. Woods on both sides, long driveway that felt like it went on forever. The front yard sloped downhill, wide open, with only a couple trees scattered around like lonely silhouettes. Then on the far side, the forest got thick, dark and tangled. Paige and Eli ran inside first, leaving me and my mom outside to grab the last few bags. We were halfway to the porch when we heard it. Leaves crunching, slow and deliberate, like something was pacing or shifting its weight. We both froze at the exact same time and stared out into the yard. At first I thought, deer, because we saw deer all the time. And in the dark, with the porch light barely reaching, it kind of made sense. Something low to the ground, partly hidden behind one of the trees. But then it stepped backward into the light, and my stomach just dropped. It wasn't a deer. It was pale, like paper white, and it looked wrong. Naked skin, no fur, no color. Too thin, like stretched, like there wasn't enough of it to fit over the bones. It was down on all fours, but not like an animal, more like a person trying to imitate one. And the head, I still don't like thinking about the head. There wasn't a face, not really. It was smooth in a way that reminded me of a store mannequin, blank and featureless, like someone forgot to finish it. And its body had this awful, twisted shape. If you've ever seen those monster designs in shows, that kind of vibe, except this was right there in our yard, breathing real air. It turned its head toward us, like it knew we were there. Then it stood up. Not slowly, not cautiously, just up, rising onto its back legs like it was deciding it didn't need to pretend anymore. And it ran. It sprinted across the yard, crossed the driveway, and charged straight into the trees, still upright, still moving like something that didn't belong in the world we live in. It was so tall that when it hit the tree line, branches shook high up, like it brushed past the tops instead of the trunks. That part is what messes with me the most, because it makes no sense unless it was huge. My mom and I bolted inside like our bodies finally remembered how to move. We slammed the door, locked it, and just stood there in the entryway, breathing hard, staring at each other like we'd both stepped into the same nightmare. And I remember whispering, "You saw that, right?" And she didn't answer right away. She just looked at me and said, "Tell me what you think you saw." So I told her everything. The pale skin, the blank head, the way it stood and ran. And she swallowed and said, "That's what I saw too." We checked the locks again. We didn't turn on extra lights or go peeking out the windows like people do in movies. We just went to bed. Because what else do you do when you've seen something you can't explain? The next morning, my mom went outside while it was bright, like daylight could make it less real. She walked to where it crossed the driveway, and that's when she found the tracks. My mom followed them for a little while, and then she stopped. She came back in looking pale and tight around the eyes, and she didn't want to talk about it anymore. After that, a few more things happened over the next week or so. Nothing as clear as seeing it in the yard, but enough to keep our nerves stretched thin. One night, we had the back sliding door open just for a minute, letting in cool air. Our dogs were right there, standing stiff as statues, low growls vibrating in their chests. My mom and I were trying to calm them down, and then we heard it. This sound, far away, but loud enough to raise the hair on my arms. It wasn't a regular animal noise. It was like a howl and a scream mashed together, like something crying out, but also warning you. We yanked the dogs inside so fast their nails scratched the floor, and we locked that door like it was the only thing holding the world together. And then, after that, it stopped. No more sounds, no more weird tracks. Eventually, we moved towns. Not because of that, just life stuff. But I've always wondered if it stayed out there, tucked into those woods like it belonged there all along. And I don't know what it was. I don't have a neat explanation. I just know what I saw, and I know my mom saw it too. And if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that I hope I never, ever end up close enough to see it again. So, I want to tell you a few things that still sit with me in that strange place between grief and comfort. It started last summer, early July, I think. My cat Juniper got really sick out of nowhere. The moment I heard, I felt this heavy drop in my stomach, like my brain had already jumped ahead and decided how the story ended. I tried to shake it off, but it just kept growing, this dread that wouldn't let me pretend everything was fine. A couple days later, the vet told us it was cancer. Nothing dramatic, no big speech, just that calm, careful tone people use when they're trying not to break you in half. And we had to make the decision. The kind of decision you never feel ready to make, even when you know it's the kindest one. We did it at my mom's place because it felt calmer there. I remember holding Juniper in my arms while my mom's neighbor, she's worked with animals before, helped her go peacefully. And I know this sounds weird, but in the middle of all that pain, I felt this sudden wave of relief. Not happiness, not okay, just peace. Like the tension finally unclenched. And I swear it felt like Juniper relaxed too, like she wasn't fighting anymore. That night I went back to my dad's house and basically collapsed into bed. I was just staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, feeling hollow. Then, sometime around 10, maybe a little after, I felt something climb up onto the bed. I'm not exaggerating. I felt the mattress dip. I felt that familiar pressure settle against my shin, like a small animal curling up. Juniper used to do that exact thing. Hop up, circle once, then press in close like she was claiming her spot beside me. I didn't even move at first. I just froze, and my eyes filled up, because it felt so real. And instead of scaring me, it helped. It felt like a final little, "I'm still here," or maybe, "You're going to be okay." And I fell asleep. The next morning I told my dad and my brother. They're not really the paranormal type, more like, show me proof or it didn't happen. But even they went kind of quiet, like they didn't know what to do with it. Honestly, the rest of that day is blurry. I know I had a job interview later, and it felt surreal doing normal life things while my chest still felt cracked open. When I told a couple friends, they didn't hesitate. They were like, "That was Juniper. She came back to check on you." And I didn't argue. I just let myself hold that. The second thing happened a while earlier, fall of 2022, maybe September. My family had to put my dog down. His name was Milo. That night I was doom scrolling on my phone, just trying not to feel anything, when I got recommended this random religious channel video, and the topic was literally grief and loss. Like, specifically. It hit me so hard I just stared at it for a minute. Now, I can explain that one logically. Algorithms pick up on what you're watching, what you're searching, the mood you're stuck in. And I remember videos like that kept popping up for a couple weeks afterward, too. So I'm not saying it was a sign, but the timing was so on the nose that it still makes me pause. And the last story goes way back. Late 2011, after my grandmother died, we took in her dog, Rosie. We had her for about a year, maybe a bit more. Then in spring 2013, she got sick, and we found out there was a mass in her heart. Even if surgery worked, which wasn't guaranteed, she was already old and struggling, and it would have just been more suffering. Around that time, I started having these really vivid dreams. Not every night, but often enough that it felt like something was trying to process through my sleep. Rosie looks at me, just a long look, like she's memorizing me. Then she turns and walks into the light. No rushing, no fear. And then the door closes and the dream ends. I don't remember exactly when I had that dream. It might have been weeks or even a couple months after she passed. And sure, it could just be grief doing what grief does, trying to create a goodbye you didn't get to fully feel in the moment. But something about it felt different. Like it wasn't only my brain, like it had its own calm gravity to it. And here's the thing that makes all of it even stranger to me. I've never really had anything like that with people in my family. And my family is huge, dozens and dozens of relatives. I've been to several funerals and nothing unexplainable has happened. I've heard my aunts and uncles tell stories after certain losses, little coincidences, little moments that felt like messages. But me? Mostly nothing. Sometimes I get this sensation though, like being watched, not in a scary way, more like being noticed. Like someone is just there, quietly, in the background. And that's it. I told my dad's partner about all this once, and she said something I've never forgotten. She told me maybe I'm just more tuned in, more aware of nature, of patterns, of tiny shifts most people brush off. And I don't know if that's true, but I do know this. When I was at my lowest, something, whether it was memory, love, grief, or something I can't explain, made the bed feel a little less empty. And sometimes, that's enough. So, this happened to me over a few years, kind of between 2020 and 2023, and even now I still remember it way too clearly, especially the dreams and the sleep paralysis. And just to say it up front, I wasn't taking any medication or anything like that. Also, English isn't my first language, so if my words sound a little off, that's why. But I'll tell it as honestly as I can. Let me give you the background first, because the house matters. Our home is old and kind of improvised. It wasn't drawn by an architect or built by an engineer. My grandparents put it together back when their little food business started doing well. This was decades ago, like around the 1950s. Later, the business fell apart because of bad handling, but the house stayed. There are several rooms in the house, and of course, I ended up sleeping in the weirdest one. My room has 2 doors, which already feels strange. And then there's this L-shaped counter inside the room with a small tap, like a mini sink area that doesn't really belong in a bedroom. My aunt, Maribel, once told me that room used to be a storage space for heavy things, like spare wheels and metal parts for trucks. Other relatives agreed like it was a normal fact, but to me, it always made the room feel unfinished, like it had another purpose before it became mine. Okay, now the story. Before all of this, I'd never had sleep paralysis. Not once. I didn't even really know what it felt like. Then, late in 2020, my aunt, Selena, died in that same room. I shared that bedroom with her for most of my life. She was much older than me, basically from another generation, and she'd been sick for a long time. Cancer. The room had 2 beds, both facing forward, and for years that was just our normal. 18 years of it. You get used to someone's breathing in the dark, you know? You get used to the little sounds of another person existing beside you. In September that year, she passed away. It was sudden. Her heart gave out. That night. I still don't know how to explain it without sounding dramatic, but I'll try. I was already in bed, half asleep, when I felt this coldness brush along my neck, like a thin ribbon of air. Not violent, almost gentle. And that's what made it worse, because it felt weirdly comforting and creepy at the same time. And then the dogs outside started howling. Not just one dog, several. Like they were answering each other, and then suddenly all the noise focused near our house, and then it stopped. Quiet again. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I remember thinking, that's new. But I was tired, and I convinced myself it was nothing. I drifted off. Then later, hours later, I woke up to commotion. My other aunt, Tessa, was shaking Selena, trying to wake her up. Not gently either, like she was refusing to believe what she was seeing. And that's when we realized she was gone. Seeing someone you've lived beside for years, lying there completely still, it does something to your brain. Her lips had turned dark, kind of purplish. I couldn't stop staring, and at the same time I didn't want to look at all. That image stayed in my head like it burned itself in. After that, the room didn't feel like a normal room anymore. Then, in 2021, the sleep paralysis started. It would happen at night, and the strangest detail is my cat, Miso, was always right beside me during those episodes. Like he knew. Like he was waiting for it. One night, I was sleeping in that room again, and I heard laughter. But then I started praying. And the longer I prayed, the louder it got. That part still chills me because it didn't feel random. It felt like something was reacting to me. The laughter grew sharper, uglier, like mockery, like the kind of laughing that wants you to feel small. I remember thinking, this sounds like something evil, and I hated that thought because I didn't want to be the kind of person who thinks like that. But I was terrified. This went on for months, episodes coming back again and again. Sometimes I'd wake up and I couldn't move at all. Not my fingers, not my legs, nothing. My body would feel pinned down, like a heavy weight pressing me into the mattress. And I'd go ice cold, like all the warmth in my body got drained out. But the worst part? I could see and hear everything. I could see the ceiling. I could hear the room. I could hear my own breathing, stuck and shallow. And the room looked normal. No shadow in the corner, no figure, nothing obvious. Just the feeling that something was there anyway. One night it was especially bad. I couldn't move, and it felt like it was taking longer than usual. Then I heard Miso. He started meowing, loud. Not normal feed me meowing. This was different. Sharp and urgent, like he was calling at something. Like he was trying to push through an invisible wall. I heard the bedroom door open. My aunt, Tessa, came in because she heard him too. She thought he was just being noisy, but Miso kept going. And that last meow, God, I swear it sounded like it cut through the whole air of the room, like it snapped something. And suddenly I could move again. I sat up so fast, like my body had been released. I went straight to him, and the moment I was awake, he stopped. Instantly, like his job was done. He climbed onto me and started rubbing against me, my arm, my chest, my shoulder, marking me with his scent like he wanted to cover me in it. He wouldn't stop for a while. He was intense about it. And in my head, all I could think was he protecting me? Because after that night, the room felt heavy. That's the only word that fits. Heavy and wrong. Like you walk into it and your chest tightens a little without you noticing. I couldn't sleep properly there anymore. So I started sleeping in another room in the same house, beside my aunt again, because being alone in that room felt impossible. And even now, when I think back on it, I still wonder what exactly was happening to me, and why it started after she died in that bed. Hey, so my best friend, Mara, died late last year. She was 28, and I'm still trying to say that sentence without my throat doing that thing where it tightens up like it's bracing for impact. Mara had this intense relationship with death. Not in a dramatic, I'm so edgy way, more like it genuinely her, and she couldn't stop circling it. She'd bring up funeral plans the way some people bring up weekend plans. She told me what songs she'd want, what she'd wear, even what she didn't want people to say. And she used to joke, half not, that if she died first, she'd come back and haunt all of us. But she'd say it with this grin, like she was trying to soften it. Like, don't worry, I'll be a helpful ghost. I'll find your missing stuff. I'll do chores. I'll scare off weird men. I'll be the friendly haunting. That was very Mara. Dark humor with this weird, protective tenderness underneath. So, here's the part I can't stop thinking about. A few weeks ago, I was in the kitchen and I heard this heavy slamming sound, like a cabinet door or a pantry door, something with weight. It happened again another night. Not a little creak, a slam. And then there was this moment with the bathroom that genuinely made my skin go cold. I remember walking past and seeing the bathroom light on. I remember the door being half open. And I watched the door swing shut like someone had pushed it. My partner was right there, so I was like, "Did you see that?" They opened the door again, and the light was off. Off. Like it had never been on in the first place. And yes, before you say it, I know memory is messy. I know lights get left on and off and your brain fills in gaps. I know all of that. But it didn't feel like a fuzzy maybe. It felt like a clear snapshot. Then there's the paint thing. I started painting again recently, which I hadn't done in a long time. One afternoon I was looking for this specific tube of paint, cadmium red, the exact one I like, not the cheap version. And I tore the room apart. I counted my tubes. I moved them all. I checked the drawers, the bag, the floor, under the desk, like I was searching for a contact lens. I was talking out loud to myself because I was so irritated, just muttering like, "Where are you? You have to be here. This is ridiculous." And then I sat down at my desk, kind of defeated, and I looked to my left, just a casual glance, and there it was, the tube. Sitting in this open little space where I know it hadn't been before, because I had literally swept that exact area with my hand. Could it be me being scatterbrained? Sure, it could. Grief does weird things. Stress does weird things. But it felt like a tiny, pointed little, "Here, calm down." And then, this one is embarrassing to admit because it makes me sound like I'm sliding backwards. Mara and I used to smoke together, back when we were younger. I quit a while ago, like fully quit, and I'd been proud of it. But after the paint incident, I don't know, I started stepping outside at night again. Just standing there in the quiet with a cigarette, talking like she can hear me. It started as this thing where I felt stupid doing it. Like, okay, I'm just talking to the air. But it turned into comfort, a routine, like I was sending my words somewhere. One night I put my cigarette out halfway through. I remember doing it carefully, snuffing it, checking it, making sure there was no glow, no smoke. Then I walked up the stairs, and halfway up I looked back down, and it was fully lit again, like it had never been touched. And yes, oxygen, wind, maybe I didn't put it out as well as I thought. I can explain that one away. I can. It's just weird. But the last thing is the one that won't settle. And then I felt it. A stiff, hard poke right at the back of my collar, through my leather jacket. Not like fabric shifting, not like a bug, not like my hair catching. It was a poke. Solid. Intentional. I felt it, and I heard it. This little tap sensation right where my neck meets the collar. I spun around so fast, my heart basically tripped over itself. My first thought was, someone threw a pebble at me. Then it was, someone touched me. I scanned everything. Walkway, shadows, cars, corners, everything. There was no one. No movement, no sound. Nothing that made sense. And then, later, when I was replaying it, I remembered something. Mara used to tell this story about us in school. She loved bringing it up. She'd say that one of her favorite things back then was that I sat behind her and I'd poke the back of her neck to get her attention. She'd imitate it too, this little flinch and laugh, and she'd be like, "You always did that. You just poke me like you were summoning me." I don't even remember doing it as clearly as she did, but she remembered. She said it more than once, like it mattered to her. So now I'm sitting with all of this, and I don't know what to do with it, because I'm not religious. I'm a skeptic. I'm the person who rolls my eyes at half the stuff people swear is paranormal. And I wasn't hunting for signs. I wasn't begging the universe to show me she's still here. But at the same time, I did start talking to her. And I can't pretend I didn't want something back, even if I told myself I was just venting into the night. And the other part is, it doesn't feel sweet. Not always. Sometimes when I think about these things, I get this heavy, wrong feeling. Like my body is reacting before my brain decides what it believes. And then I spiral, because I've heard all those stories, you know? About grief attracting the wrong kind of attention. About things that aren't your person pretending to be. I don't even know if I believe that. But the idea wedges itself in anyway when you're already raw. And there's one more layer that makes me feel kind of crazy. There have been a few moments where I had this gut sense something was going to happen right before it did. Not like a dramatic vision, more like a quiet certainty that showed up, uninvited. And then it happened. And I don't know what to call that. Intuition? Pattern brain? Grief brain trying to create order? I don't know. I just keep thinking about Mara joking, "I'll haunt you, but I'll be helpful." And then I think about the slams and the paint and that poke at my collar like a hand reaching through a locked door. And I'm left with this question I can't answer. Is it her? Or is it just my mind trying to survive her absence? Either way, it feels real when it happens, and I don't know what to do with the feeling it leaves behind. Okay, so you have to promise you'll hear me out, because I know how this sounds. I live in this really old high-rise, like ancient old. It's over a century old, and it used to be a hotel back in the day. The kind of place where you just feel the history the second you walk into the lobby, you know? When I first moved in, I had my cat. Her name was Miso, and she started doing this thing that I couldn't explain. I'd leave to run errands, grab groceries, whatever, and when I came back, she'd be posted up in the living room staring at the same spots like she was watching a person standing there. And not just a casual glance, no. This was intense, like locked in. And I'd walk through the door, and she'd flick her eyes over to me like, "You seeing this?" And she'd make this sound, this low, angry little rah, then snap her stare right back to the exact same place. Then she'd look at me again, rah, and back again, like she was trying to translate something for me and getting frustrated that I didn't speak the language. At first, I tried to laugh it off. Cats are weird. I told myself that 100 times. But deep down, I knew. I just knew she was seeing something. And then, it didn't take long for whatever it was to make sure I knew too. It started small, kind of, but not really. One day I'm in the hallway, not even near the kitchen, and I hear this sudden crash that's so loud my stomach dropped. I ran in, and a glass had flown off the counter and shattered like someone had swiped it with a hand. And the thing is, nothing was unsteady. No vibration, no wind, nothing. It didn't fall. It got thrown. After that, it escalated. Lights would do this insane thing where they'd flare up so bright it looked like a stadium spotlight turned on in my living room. My lamps, the overhead lights, everything. Just blazing for a second, then snapping back to normal like nothing happened. Like something was showing off. Like, "Hi, I can do this." And then, the voices started. Not like a whisper right in my ear, more like people talking to each other in another room. Like two strangers having a conversation as if I wasn't even there. I'd freeze and try to listen, and it would feel so real I'd start checking my phone to see if I left the TV on. But the TV would be off. The hallway would be empty. The apartment would be quiet. Except for them. Then I started seeing shapes. Not all the time, but enough that I couldn't pretend anymore. Figures, kind of half-formed. Sometimes I'd see a face out of the corner of my eye, like someone leaning around a doorway. Sometimes it would be like a body without legs, like the bottom half just wasn't there. And I know that sounds impossible, but it's exactly why it messed with me so badly. Because my brain couldn't make it make sense. And then it got physical. I don't mean like a chill down your spine. I mean I was touched, like an actual hand, on my arm, on my shoulder, more than once. And one time, I swear on everything, I felt breath blow right across my face hard enough to move my hair, like I had leaned into a giant fan. I remember flinching so hard my neck hurt afterward. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was what happened when I slept. I was asleep, and suddenly I was ripped awake, and I literally went flying off the bed. Not rolling, not stumbling, flying. I went across the room, landed on my hands and knees, and my head hit the floor so hard I saw stars. I remember sitting there shaking, touching the side of my head, and it was swelling up instantly, this huge lump. My knees were scraped raw like road rash. I was so scared after that I begged a friend, Tara, to stay the night. I told her, "I just need someone here while I sleep, please." And that night, she saw it. She told me the next morning with this pale face like she hadn't slept at all. She said she saw my body jerking while I was asleep, like something was tugging on me. Then she watched me get thrown off the bed. She kept saying, "I don't know what I saw, but I saw it." And I'm telling you, that broke something open in me. Because it wasn't just my fear anymore. It wasn't just me. I had proof. Another person witnessed it. After that, I stopped trying to be polite about it. I started fighting back the only way I knew how. I saged the apartment, more than once. I opened windows. I prayed out loud. I demanded, firmly, that whatever was there was not welcome, not invited, and it had to leave. I said it over and over, daily, sometimes multiple times a day. I kept telling myself, I walk with God. I am protected. Even when I didn't feel brave, I said it anyway, because I needed something stronger than fear. And it didn't leave right away. It stayed for a long time. Not weeks, not a couple months, almost a year, more actually. It was like it wanted to wear me down, like it was waiting for me to stop resisting. But eventually, it faded. The air changed. The apartment felt like mine again. Miso stopped staring into corners like she was tracking a person pacing back and forth. The lights behaved. The crashes stopped. The whole place finally went still. I thought it was over. And then, this part still makes me sick. Someone new moved into the building. Not someone I knew, just a new tenant. A few days later, I'm down by the snack machines with Tara, and we hear this guy talking to someone. Casual, like he's complaining about the weather. And he goes, "I keep getting jerked awake and thrown to the floor from my sleep." I felt my whole body go cold. I nudged Tara so hard I nearly elbowed her. My mouth was hanging open, my eyes probably the size of dinner plates. And Tara was staring at me with the exact same face like, "No, no way." And she mouthed, "Oh my God." Just like that. No sound, just the words. Because we both knew. It didn't disappear. It just moved. And if you're wondering why I stayed, why I didn't run the first time my cat did that angry little rah, it's because real life isn't always simple. I'm in my 50s, living on a fixed income, and I don't have a big support system. I couldn't just pack up and go. If I could have, I'm telling you, I would have been gone at the first sign. But that's why I'm so certain. Not 90%, not maybe. I am completely, undeniably convinced there's something paranormal in this world. I lived it. I felt it. And I had someone else see it too. And I'm just grateful, so grateful, that it finally let me go. So, I don't even know how to explain this without sounding dramatic, but I swear, there was a stretch of time where my bedroom just felt off. Like, you know that feeling when you're alone, but your body doesn't believe you're alone? That. It wasn't loud or obvious at first, just this weird pressure in the air, like the room had a mood. At the beginning, I brushed it off. I told myself I was tired, stressed, overthinking, whatever. But deep down, I had this tiny suspicion I didn't really want to name. Because once you name it, it feels real. Then one night, out of nowhere, I started hearing these sounds that didn't match anything normal in the house. I'm the kind of person who notices little noises, pipes, wind, the usual stuff. But these were different. They had this intent to them. And then it got worse, because I heard scratching, like nails dragging along the wall right beside my bed. Slow, deliberate, right there. I didn't sleep at all, not even a little. My whole body stayed in that fight or flight state, like my nervous system was standing guard. Every time I tried to relax, I'd feel that prickly, something's wrong sensation crawl back up my spine. The next day, I told my parents. Well, my mom first. Her name's Marisol, and she basically laughed it off in that gentle way parents do when they think you're spiraling. My stepdad, Dario, just shook his head and told me I was probably dreaming half of it. Like, sure, okay, except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like my room had turned into a place I couldn't fully control anymore. So I started praying at night. Not in a panic, just like setting boundaries. Like, hey, this is my space. I'd sit on the edge of the bed, whisper prayers, try to calm myself down. And during the day, I'd feel fine, mostly. But at night, my intuition kept insisting there was still something there, waiting for the lights to go out. One night, I did what I always do. I lay down, got comfortable, and said the Lord's Prayer quietly to myself. I remember thinking, okay, tonight's going to be normal. It has to be. And then, the noises started again. Instantly, my body went rigid, like I'd been trained for it. My chest tightened, my muscles locked. My brain went into this high-pressure mode where you're trying to listen to everything at once. And then it happened. This heavy feeling, like someone dropped weight onto my body. Not a blanket heavy, not sleep heavy, like presence heavy. Like something had climbed up and settled right on top of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't fully breathe right. And in that moment, I just knew, not guessed, not wondered. I knew something was taking from me, like it was feeding on whatever energy I had left. When morning came, I felt wrecked. Not, I slept badly, tired. More like I'd run for miles in my sleep. My body felt drained, like my battery had been left open all night. And then, this part still freaks me out when I think about it. My necklace snapped later that day. A necklace I wore constantly. It didn't get caught on anything. It didn't tug. It just broke, right in my hands. And I remember staring at it like, oh, so this isn't just in my head. That's when I decided to do something more traditional, something my aunt used to talk about, an egg cleansing. I know some people think it's superstition, but at that point, I didn't care. I needed something that felt like protection, like clearing, like reclaiming my space. I did it carefully, quietly, trying to be respectful about it. But at night, I still catch that feeling sometimes. Not as intense, not as terrifying, but like something is lingering around the edges, hoping I'll slip back into fear. And here's the thing, I'm not sitting here shaking in terror. I'm not. It's more like they're annoying, like an unwanted visitor who doesn't understand boundaries. They don't leave you alone easily, and maybe that's the whole point. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only one. There are so many people who felt something unexplainable, something that doesn't fit neatly into logic or coincidence. And I don't need everyone to believe me. I just wanted to say, this happened to me, and I know what I felt. So, when I was in high school, I had this beat-up upright piano in our garage. It was one of those old ones that never stayed in tune, but I loved it anyway. I'd come home from school, drop my bag, and just disappear into the garage for hours, playing until my fingers felt sore in that good way. One afternoon, the weather was weirdly perfect. Warm, calm, bright. So I had the garage door open. I remember I was working through some Debussy, just getting into that floaty, quiet headspace where everything else sort of fades out. And then, this happened so fast I still don't know how to explain it without sounding ridiculous. A brown, dead leaf-colored thing, that's honestly the closest description I've got, shot straight up from behind the piano, like it launched, and it made this sharp, unmistakable hissing sound. Not like a soft rustle, not like air moving, a hiss. My whole body reacted before my brain did. I threw my hands up, leaned back hard, and froze, like I was bracing for it to hit my face. I could barely hear anything else. And then, it was just gone. I stayed like that, hands still up, shoulders tense, for what felt like forever. If I had to guess, maybe 45 seconds? A full minute? I remember thinking, okay, don't move, don't look away. If it comes back, and then I finally bolted out into the alley behind our garage. Here's the part that makes me feel extra insane. Where I was sitting, I could see basically the whole garage and all the exits. The garage was empty, no car parked inside, no stacked boxes, no cluttered corners to hide in. My back was against the side wall, so I was facing outward, looking into the space. It's a simple square garage, no weird storage loft, no little nook behind shelving. So I have no idea where it came from or where it went. I stood in the alley for a minute, breathing like I'd just sprinted, still in shock. Then, when my nerves calmed down enough that curiosity started wrestling with fear, I walked back in, slowly, and searched everywhere. Under the piano, behind it, around every side. I even got down on my knees and checked the floor like I was looking for a dropped contact lens. Nothing. And the thing is, because it looked so much like a dead leaf, I actually tried to convince myself that's all it was. Like maybe a leaf blew in and caught air somehow. But there was no wind. The air was completely still. And it hadn't been leaf season or anything. There weren't even dead leaves scattered around nearby. Plus, leaves don't hiss. They just don't. A few minutes later, my dad pulled into the alley coming home from work. I was still shaky, and when he got out of the car, I walked right up to him and told him what happened. And I started crying, which embarrassed me even as it was happening. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I was just genuinely terrified and confused. My sister Mara was there too, and they both kind of laughed it off. Like, not in a mean way, more like, "What are you talking about?" They didn't believe me. My younger brothers were little, and either don't remember or never really took it seriously. But my mom said she believed me. She didn't pretend to know what it was, but she looked at me like, "I know you're not making this up." I tried researching it later because what else do you do when something impossible happens? But nothing matched. This was in a Midwest city, and most of the creature stuff online either sounds like folklore from somewhere totally different, or it's so vague it could be anything. And here's the part that messes with me a little. About 3 weeks after I saw it, my grandpa passed away. He was really old, and it wasn't sudden, so I don't genuinely think it was connected. But it still planted this weird seed in my head. Like the timing made everything feel heavier. And honestly, that stretch afterward was rough. Just bad luck stacked on bad luck. I even got clipped by a car a couple months later, not horribly, but enough to leave me rattled and bruised, and wondering if the universe had quietly put a target on my back. I've been in that garage plenty of times since then. I've played music out there again. I've stood in the exact same spot and tried to recreate the moment. Like if I stare long enough, maybe my brain will finally solve it. But I never saw it again. So I don't know. Maybe it was something completely normal that my mind turned into a monster because I was alone and caught off guard. Or maybe it really was something I can't explain. All I know is, a dead leaf-colored thing shot up behind my piano, hissed at me, and vanished. And I still think about it more often than I'd like to admit. So, I've had a pretty wild life, honestly. And there's this one weird thing that's followed me for, God, close to a decade now. It's changed shapes over the years, but it's been consistent. Like a roommate that never pays rent and never shows its face. It started out simple, if you can even call it simple. I'd be lying in bed and feel my mattress breathing under me, like the whole thing had lungs. And then there were nights where I'd feel someone sit on the edge of the bed, clear as day, except when I'd look, there was nobody there. Sometimes it felt like the bed got smacked, like a hand hitting it. The whole thing would shudder. And the creepiest part? It didn't matter where I slept. Different apartments, different houses, different beds. I even tried a hammock once. Thought maybe it was the mattress, or the frame, or, I don't know, something explainable. But in the hammock it turned into this poking feeling, like someone tapping the air right into my body. I got so fed up that I slept on the floor for years. Years. I figured, all right, you want to mess with my bed? Fine, no bed. And at first I'd bolt upright and run, like full panic, heart hammering, lights on, checking corners like that would help. But over time, it stopped being scary. Not because it got nicer, just because I got tired. You know how you can get used to almost anything when it keeps happening long enough? Still, there were phases where it got more intense. Like when it started feeling like someone was sitting on my legs, not heavy exactly, but enough to pin me in place. And then it would tap my legs up and down, like it was drumming on me. Sometimes I'd feel it under my arms, or like something shifting under the pillow, like a presence trying to get comfortable right next to my head. Most nights it's just this steady, annoying thing. It feels like invisible hands pressing down on the bed beside me, over and over, gently lifting and lowering the mattress like it's kneading dough. All night. Long enough that I just learned to ignore it the way you ignore a neighbor's loud TV. And then it'll disappear for months. Like it forgets I exist. But when life gets rough, when I'm stressed or sick or worn down, it comes back stronger, like it can smell weakness. There were a few nights where it felt like it was powerful enough to shove me, like actually push my body. For a while, I even had this sharp feeling that it wanted to push me away from my partner at the time, like it was trying to wedge itself between us. Her name was Tessa. She left about 5 months ago, so now I live alone. Which brings me to last night. Last night was different, completely. I was lying there with one arm stretched out, half asleep, not even thinking, and I felt a hand take mine. Not grabbing, not pulling, just holding. Like fingers lacing lightly, like someone careful. And then this slow, gentle squeeze, exactly the way someone does when they really care about you and they don't need to prove anything. And the energy, yeah, I'm going to call it energy because I don't have a better word, was so different. Warm, soft, almost affectionate. Like it wasn't there to annoy me or mess with me. It felt like it knew me, like it was familiar with me in this deeply personal way, and it was trying to comfort me. But last night, none of that. It was gentle the whole time. I felt the weight move slowly along my forearm, like a calming massage. And the best comparison I can give you is, you know that feeling when you hold a strong magnet near something and there's that push-pull pressure? That invisible force you can feel? It was like that. Like a magnetic massage, like something was shaping the air around my body. Then it drifted down to my leg, moving upward gradually, slow, deliberate, almost curious. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it paused right at my crotch, and I swear I had this moment of, nope, absolutely not. What is happening right now? Because when physical boundaries aren't really a boundary, suddenly the list of possibilities gets way longer, and your brain starts scrambling to catch up. It didn't go all the way. Which, yeah, I'm human. I'm gonna admit I was kind of annoyed about that, because the sensation was honestly nice. But it started fading, getting weaker, like whatever strength it had was running out. Except the hand-holding didn't stop. That part stayed steady, gentle squeezes, like reassurance. Like, it's okay, I'm here. And I just passed out, completely. Like my body finally believed it was safe. Now I'm awake and I keep replaying it, trying to make sense of it. Like, did my sleep ghost decide to be romantic? What even is that? It felt so loving, so kind, so intimately calm, like it wasn't some random thing wandering through my room. It felt personal. And maybe this is relevant, maybe it isn't, but I'll tell you anyway. Since Tessa left, I've been kind of messy. I've been seeing a few people. One of them is this very witchy, spiritual type. Actually, more than one if I'm being honest. And part of me wonders if I invited something in without realizing it. Or if I've been around enough people who believe in certain things that, I don't know. Something noticed me. But yeah, that was last night. And I don't know whether to feel comforted, confused, or deeply weirded out. Mostly, I just can't stop thinking about how gentle it was